Hello and welcome to episode 69 of the Movies in a Podshell podcast. The podcast where we take a theme. And this week's theme is silent to talkies. As always, I'm joined by, does Piggy like that? You can call him John.
Hi, I don't actually know what that's in relation to. Oh, yeah, no, I do. I've just remembered the scene. Thanks for that.
It's at the beginning of the first film we're going to talk about this week, which is Babylon.
Yeah.
It's a film where there's a woman standing over a man doing something. Anyway, I just thought, episode 69, John, can you believe it? Ooh, naughty. Sorry, the thing is, right, I know I'm a child. Well, I'm not. I'm nearly 35, but I'm never going to have the chance to do that ever again. Because we only get one episode 69.
It is actually wild we've been going this long, though. Every time I'm like, man, here we are.
Yeah, it is. The podcast or as human beings, because I wake up every day feeling like that.
Life in general. No, podcast for sure. I think it's quite impressive we got this far down the line.
Oh, it's amazing. And this is our last ever
episode.
It's not. Do you know what?
Taking off, mate.
Yeah, the podcast and just in general, every day when my alarm goes off and I open my eyes, I'm like, another day. Just gotta go to work, and and then in the weekends I'm like, oh, amazing, I get to watch some films, and then I blink and then it's over, and then I'm back at work on Monday, and then here we are. But yeah, and I agree, John. We've done 69 episodes, and I can't quite believe it because, do you know what? I don't know. Forgive me if I've spoken about it on the pod before, because it's boring if I have. But someone wrote into this podcast, the regular podcast I listen to, and they were like, "Oh, I really want to be a podcaster." Look at me stroking my Mac. I really want to be a podcaster. Have you got any tips? And this podcast is quite big. And the guy that hosts the podcast was like, "The tip is this: just don't do it to get famous, because no matter one, it's just luck. It's like a lottery if you're going to get big or not, whatever. And that's not why we do it anyway. And two, you've just got to be really, really good. And three, the biggest advice I could ever give you is just simply make podcasts, because the amount of podcasts that stop after 5 episodes, and we said this, didn't we? Because I don't think we started doing this in lockdown, where we arguably did have more time, I guess.
Definitely.
And now when someone says to me how long does it take you to do a podcast? I'm like, well, let's say the average film is 2 hours, so 2 hours for 2 films, so that's maybe average 4 hours or slightly under. And
I reckon it's more. I reckon it's 5 hours film watching, about 2.5 hours ish record, and then edit. Edit's got quicker because we've got Riverside. But
you're desperate. It's pathetic, John. You're desperate for a sponsorship.
Give us a sponsorship.
Am I at the price of that, Riverside. But you know what? Worth the money. So yeah. So you've got that time as well, and then the research as well. I say to people sometimes, I'm like, when we're going to record, we'll have watched the films, and then I'll go home from work, and then I'm just sitting there researching, watching directors' commentaries or listening to them while I'm cooking. Doing background research. There's so much research.
Watching video essays. There's usually a fair few video essays to go out these days as well.
Watching video.
Different opinions.
That. Exactly. I bought a Silent to Talkies book. Asked me if I read it. I tried. But it's crazy, because it is a lot of work, and I think that's what a lot of people probably don't understand. So I would also give that same advice, to get to episode 69, like you boys. Oh God, I just made myself sick in my mouth.
Jeez, he's 4 minutes in. We've not even talked about what we've watched. Come on, Jamie. What have we been up to? What have we been watching?
Do you want to go first this week? So you've actually got stuff to talk about.
Yeah. So I've actually watched things.
His little girl's getting older, and now what he can do is he just leaves her in the house while he goes cinema. Does not happen.
So I've been watching some things. I went to go and see Wonka at the cinema, starring Timothée Chalamet, and I'll be honest, I actually really enjoyed it. I don't think it's particularly marketed at me. I like the original Willy Wonka. I don't really know many people who don't, to be completely honest. And it's the director of Paddington 1 and 2, which I actually really enjoy as well. And it sounds a bit cheesy, but it's just quite a charming film. I don't think it's an amazing film. It's just quite charming. I love the cast in it, though. there's a load of English comedians from like 2010 onwards, which is very much my era. So you've got Olivia Colman as one of the bad guys, Mrs. Scrubbit. She's with Tom Davis, who plays Bleacher. Patterson Joseph is Mark's boss in Peep
Never heard of
Show,
him.
plays
Oh,
Slugworth,
sorry, you were
and
explaining
he
who he
is
was. Sorry.
so funny. Like,
Okay.
so it is a musical, and Matt Lucas is in it as well, and there's a few
Hugh
sequences
Grant.
where Hugh Grant's in it as well.
Yeah.
It's just like, yeah, it's if you like Paddington, you won't be disappointed. It's very much a similar thing, but I think Paddington's far more quintessentially British, whilst this is a kind of a mix of American and English. It's kind of like half American cast, half UK cast.
Yeah.
But it's quite English humour at a lot of points. And Rowan Atkinson's in there. I always love seeing Rowan
Brilliant.
Atkinson
Yeah,
doing
it's
his
fun.
shtick.
What's your favourite comedy ever, isn't it, Mr. Bean? So
so yeah, no, I really enjoyed it, and it's one of those where we listen to it at the cinema, and there's a few tracks that are from the original film that are like sprinkled throughout.
is
And then
there?
there's
Okay.
yeah, and then it kind of you have leitmotifs which build to those pieces that we know.
Yeah.
So it's really nice hearing how they
What do
form.
you get when you guzzle down sweet? I did that on the last episode.
Hugh Grant as well, yeah, doing a bit of
All
that.
I've got is one note wonder.
But yeah, really, just a really nice film. I mean, yeah, I think when it comes to streaming, it's worth checking out. But it's just fun, and like I said, the music's just been really earwormy, and it's stuck in my head for like the past 2 weeks since I've seen it, and it's very rare I feel that way. So that's been cool. And then the other film I went to go and see, I actually did on on Apple you can pay for the early access when it's still at the cinema, but you pay like a cinema ticket fee. I
500 quid.
no, it was £15, which is what Disney did in COVID for watching Cruella when it came out. So I watched the latest Hunger Games film, which is called The Hunger Games: The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. Now, full disclosure, Jamie takes the mickey out of my obsession with Hunger Games. To clarify, my wife is obsessed with Hunger Games, like absolutely loves it and loves the world. And it's a film series we pretty much rewatched every year, pretty much since I've known her. But I hadn't read the book of The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, so I went into it completely blind. And I really enjoyed it. And if you don't like the previous Hunger Games films, I don't feel like there's anything here that's going to particularly get you into it more so. But what I do think's like better in this is Jennifer Lawrence is fantastic in those films, as is Philip Seymour Hoffman, as is Donald Sutherland.
Yeah.
But around them, there's some like okay or like so-so.
Woody Harrelson. I can't believe you didn't mention him.
No, he's good in it. So do you know what? I'm being harsh. There's far more good people than not so great people. But in this film, I thought Rachel Zegler was so good. So she's very different to Jennifer Lawrence's character. She's essentially travels around the districts and gets caught up in one, and then gets put forward for the Hunger Games.
Mm-hmm.
But the whole it's the pre-story of why Snow is the bad guy in the Hunger Games films, and essentially you find out through this film like how that comes to pass, and he's sent to look after Lucy Gray to get her through the Hunger Games. And she's a musician, so there's a lot of music in it, musical motifs you'll know from the other Hunger Games films and how that feeds into the folklore and stuff. So
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it, and as
This
you
is
can
so
probably tell,
weird because I've heard like such bad things about it. 'Cause
yeah,
it's like
well, it's too long. I think it's
2 hours and 40 minutes for a
it's-
Hunger Games film.
yeah, and to be honest, it's a lot of world building stuff. But I tell you who else is in it who's brilliant. Is it Viola Davis or Viola Davis?
Yeah,
Either
Viola
way,
Davis, yeah.
she is so good in it. She plays
Okay.
like essentially a mad scientist who comes up with the traps for the Hunger Games, but she's just chewing scenery and loving it. But yeah, it is. It's one of those films where, like, in Snyder Cut, where it's like part 1 Reckoning, part 2 this, part 3, part 4.
Yeah.
So it has that within it in this film. So it's kind of like before the first Hunger Games, not the first Hunger Games, before 10th Hunger Games, sorry, like during and what's going on, and then there's a section after and about the consequences of that. So it is long, but I'll be honest, as someone who I would consider as a fan, it just didn't particularly bother me. I enjoy that world. I enjoy seeing it in more detail, so it's really good. Big shout out for Tom Blythe, who played Coriolanus Snow. I felt like he had enough of in it to look or feel like Donald Sutherland would grow up into him, a bit like Ewan McGregor with Obi-Wan. But again, final point, Rachel Zegler was just so good because I think it's her singing in real life. I hope it's her singing in real life. But she's just like
No, I
the
think it would be
performance she gives
because
is great.
yeah, she was in West Side Story, the new one
Of course, she
with
was.
from
Sorry.
Spielberg.
And
And I
isn't
think
she doing
that's
Snow White as well? I think maybe.
I wouldn't like to say because I don't know. It's funny. You have just reminded me because you mentioned Snyder because you can't help yourself. Uh, we had a comment.
Thanks for the lovely comments last
We had
week,
a comment.
guys.
Yeah.
It's
I'm
fine.
not gonna. Do you know what?
No, no, it's fine.
One of them done really. We had a really good short that did really well on YouTube, and that does remind me actually. If you whoever's out there, please pause the pod. Not right now, but after I've said this, then you can pause it. We really, really need you to subscribe to the YouTube channel. It's Movies in a Podshell, please,
Like and
because
subscribe.
it's
Turn on the bell for
literally.
notifications.
Literally, like and
We are
subscribe,
that people.
yeah, we are.
Those people.
But it would help us monetize, and if we can monetize, then
We can do more.
we can do more stuff. And trust me, every single penny that we make and more of our own personal money just goes back into the pod, into like I don't know, paying for really
Riverside.
good streams like this. Riverside. So yeah, but we did have a hilarious comment. I'm not going to shame them by saying it, but I sent it to John last night. It was quite late last night. The weird scary thing is that we're on because we are on YouTube now. Is that I'm starting to get worried about like I don't know if I like it because we're uploading to TikTok, uploading to YouTube, and we're just getting like so many comments being like because we had a comment we had a question. It was actually really good and it provoked some good conversation. The question was, does Zack Snyder is he held to a higher standard than other directors? And
The response to it was so funny.
we had so many responses being like, actually, he's held to a lower standard. But then someone says Zack Snyder is cinematic syphilis.
So do you know what though? It's all engagement and like no, genuinely, it is. Every so often there will be some genuine like thought process and explanation to ideas, and we've had some good fun with those and like really going through them. But every so often you will just get a load of abuse, and it is quite funny. So
Yeah. But anyway, so please go on YouTube, subscribe to us, please help us. John, next film. What you've been watching so much, matey.
For me,
I don't know why I did
this is
that,
a lot.
matey.
It's okay. The last one is a rewatch, and I think I've talked about it on the pod before, so I'll be careful. But there's a new Alien series coming out, which I'm really excited about, called Alien Romulus. So I'm going to do something we don't normally do. Let's talk news, Jamie. News on Alien Romulus.
You've surprised, you shocked me. What am I going to do now?
I think this will genuinely shock you. So Ridley Scott's producing this series. It's the same creator who did Fargo and who did Legion. Legion I really enjoyed. I didn't watch Fargo.
Mm-hmm.
He basically said that he hates the whole what David making the alien thing, so he's just going to ignore it. He's literally just been like, for me, them being the perfect life form means that for millions of years they've existed. I don't like this idea. So they've released a piece of content previously which kind of hinted that the aliens already existed. David just made his version of them, which is what I believed at the time anyway. I never believed he made them originally. Anyway, so the new series, he also specifically said he doesn't like the production design of Covenant and of Prometheus because, and it's mad.
I love the production design.
Sorry, the TV show isn't Alien Romulus, that's a film, but we'll get onto that after. But for this TV show, they are specifically using the 70s, 79 aesthetic and 86 aesthetic from Alien and Aliens,
Brilliant.
which is the bigger CRT TVs. I'm thinking it's going to be more like Blade Runner 2049. Which kept that aesthetic, didn't
exciting.
it? So we'll see. I'm really hopeful for it, but it got me rewatching Covenant because I still think, whatever you think of that film, I personally really enjoy it. I rate it quite highly, but it's
So do I. So do I.
It's a very, very good looking film. So I had for Christmas,
Sexy film, yeah. Scary
I wish I brought
as
it
well.
upstairs. A coffee table book all about like the production artwork and behind the scenes, and I love that stuff. Reading about it, a lot of the set interiors were carried over from The Martian because Ridley created like loads of sci-fi things he liked for that. So he brought.
Yeah, you said that like the seats from The Martian was used because I recently rewatched
New Zealand.
The Martian. Yeah,
yeah. Martian's a good film as well. And look, I think everyone knows like even if you don't enjoy the scripts of some of Ridley's films, like they always look incredible. And for me, I do enjoy the script of Covenant. I like a lot of the ideas and themes of it. But I rewatched it, and again, it was after Jamie and I had the chat last week about streams versus the or like physical media, and it was only the Blu-ray, but my god, it looked incredible. I've not actually watched. I think I've watched 2 Blu-rays on this TV since I've
Yeah.
been here, because in that year I have had a child, which took up quite a lot of time. But I just haven't really watched physical media. I've done a lot more streaming and quick stuff, so it's really nice watching it and getting the full experience. But really good soundtrack
Yeah.
and just good fun.
I'll tell you what, it is. I actually really like Alien Covenant, and it's absolutely, it's probably one of the best looking Blu-rays I've got. I've got it on 4K.
Yeah.
It's
Is
not
it
often I
Catherine
trump.
Wilson as well? Who's the lead? She's really good.
Oh,
I've forgotten her name.
I don't know.
Shut up.
Um,
She's in Babylon as well, but so I'll find out later.
right, okay.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Well, I was just going to say about physical media. So I've been quite naughty at the moment, and I've been really buying a lot of 4Ks lately. Because I'm really invested now. Like, this is it now. I feel like we're in the heyday of 4K Blu-rays. Criterion are releasing some. So I've actually pre-ordered 2 Criterions. I've pre-ordered Thelma and Louise, and I've pre-ordered Linklater's Dazed and Confused. So I'm going pretty hard. And also I actually watched. I am terrible. Like, I've actually got Singing in the Rain on Blu-ray, but I rebought it on 4K, and I bought Babylon on 4K as well. Babylon, I think, is the film to watch on 4K. Like, it's.
We'll get into that. Don't
We will
spoil that
anyway.
yet.
Yeah. So you watched something else, haven't you? Tell about a TV you've been watching.
Yeah, a few quick bits to catch up on.
Yeah.
So that TV series covered it off. Alien Romulus, I'm looking forward to as well, which is coming this year. Can't believe that. That's kind of
Excellent.
snuck up out of nowhere.
And that's a film, right?
It is, and it's from the director of what's the horror series that we watched at your house, and it's the woman who puts the thing through her tongue, and I went mad. Evil Dead remake, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, okay.
So yeah, it's
The
going to be.
Argentinian director?
I believe so. So I think it's going to be.
Okay.
Check for me quickly.
I
But
am
it's,
trying.
It's going to be. I think it's going to be far more horror focused. I think they've said it's going to be more like a slasher, but I feel like it's going to be more.
Fade Alvarez. Yeah. Sorry, I couldn't think of his name.
I'm excited. I liked his. I don't love horror films, as we've talked about before, but I'm getting more into them, and like that film is incredibly visceral. So if I get that kind of visceral reaction from an Alien film again, then I think that's only a good thing. Then, speaking of visceral reactions to things, I have watched a series. The first episode, I'll go through, is The New True Detective, starring Jodie Foster. It's really good. It's really creepy, really weird.
Okay.
So without giving away spoilers, I think the vibe of it is kind of, because it's based in Alaska, Wind River, The Thing.
It's based in Alaska,
like,
is it?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I love that. I love that setting.
Yeah, it looks like such a harsh place to try and live. So I remember years ago, is it not Dusk Till Dawn? Is it 30 Days of Night, isn't it?
Yeah.
That like vampire film. So I remember seeing that when I was like 14, 15, it really creeping me out. But it's a really good premise for like horror or like just feeling at unease because the daylight's so short. So things that aren't remotely dangerous feel way more dangerous because of the conditions.
Well, did you know Alaskans, if there's any Alaskan listeners, sorry if I've mistakenly called you an Alaskan, but it feels right. Imagine if it was a crazy slur.
Yeah.
Like, I'm so sorry. I did not mean it. I'm not aware. Anyway, Alaskans, I'm pretty sure that's absolutely fine to say. So I'll say it 4 times. Alaskans, they spend 4 months of the year in pitch black.
Yeah.
Believe that.
I find it so creepy. And like,
exactly.
It's so difficult to navigate.
A film that I love, 2 films that I really love, set in Alaska. One would be The Edge with Anthony Hopkins and Alec Baldwin. It's a brilliant film. I spoke about it on the pod before. Go check it out. Like, crazy 90s thriller, like that you just wouldn't expect. I believe it's probably on. I think it's on Disney Plus as well. And another really good film with Sandra Bullock, The Proposal. I mean, I love it. What are you going to do about it?
That was not where I expected this conversation to go from.
Great film.
Jodie Foster's 62, by the way, which I hadn't clocked.
I would imagine she would be, yeah.
I feel like she's been in films forever, and I suppose she has, because she was in.
Oh, do you think she would have been older than that?
Yeah, to be honest, because she started so young.
In Silence of the Lambs, she was dead young, yeah.
Yeah, but she was in like Taxi Driver, wasn't she? She was like super young. Anyway,
she was. Oh yeah,
the cinematography of True Detective is insane. Like, it's every so often you get like that HBO feeling.
Yeah.
Which I know sounds really cheesy, but you watch it, you think, oh, this is premium TV, and it sounds really bad, but you do just get
that does cringe.
That moment.
This is big time, baby.
Yeah, and it's the theme tune's by Billie Eilish, and it's like this. True Detective's always had good music, always had good needle drops, as people say, but it's really, really well done, and just a great sense and feeling of unease. It's only episode 1 out now, but I would really recommend it. If you were going to wait a few weeks, then maybe do that. But
Okay.
it's
Because
carry
this
on.
season one's incredible, and then it's weird because they tried to carry on this duo detective, like really famous actors. So it was the second season. I
Colin
want to say with
Farrell
Vince
and Rachel
Vaughn.
McAdams, wasn't it?
I thought it was Vince Vaughn and Colin Farrell. What am I getting mixed up
No,
with?
no. You might be right. You might be right.
Yeah. Anyway, like, and it was just not good. Like, really not good. But I think that it was really hard to live up to that first season because the first season of True Detective is considered one of the best seasons of television ever.
I feel like season 3 I didn't watch, but a lot of people actually gave it a lot of
Yeah,
positive
so that
reviews.
had Mahershala Ali in it, which he's
Correct.
good. He's really good in it. So yeah, well, he's good in everything. To be fair, yeah,
And
cool.
then last 2 TV shows very quickly
Oh yeah,
because
can't wait to
we're
hear
already
about one of
20
these.
minutes
I've been
in.
hearing about it all the time.
So the first one very quickly is another one that's being released weekly, which is Criminal Record, which has in Peter Capaldi's latest series, where essentially it's a London-based crime drama, thriller kind of vibe.
Hmm.
It doesn't give me that HBO feeling,
That's
but
on
it is.
Apple, isn't it?
It's on Apple TV. Incredibly high production values. Really
Yeah.
like it. But my only snag with it is really weird. When they're in the car sequences, the frame rate of the volume or whatever they shot it on doesn't match inside the car. Oh my god! So
Oh,
it's like lagging as the cars go past. My brain's going, no, like I can't deal with that.
what a rookie error, John! You would never make that error over at
Well,
JCB.video.
I really wanted to be like, what's happened, but I don't think anyone cares enough. But in this day and age, it's kind of,
It's
I don't think it's
unacceptable.
acceptable. But
It's
anyway,
unacceptable,
there
John.
we go. The last one, and this is
Here we go.
probably my new big favorite thing.
Big
It's
time, baby.
called For All Mankind, which was one of the hero shows when Apple TV launched. This is one of the big, like, this is what we're going with. It stars Joel Kinnaman essentially as an astronaut, and the base of the show is very simple. And this isn't a spoiler because it is the base of the entire program. The Americans lost the space race. The first man on the moon was a Russian, and it's about how the world changes from there.
So it's a true
each
story then.
No. So each series follows through like a cycle of probably a couple of years, and then each series in between jumps ahead 10 years so you can see
Right.
the progress of what's going on. For me, it's playing on real life characters, it's playing on events that happen in real life and moving them around. It's just
Okay.
a really interesting what if story in itself, but also a lot of the basis at the start initially anyway is technology and things that really happened in just used in different ways, which I
Right.
find quite
Okay.
incredible. The performances from everybody. So you watched Apollo 13 with me, so you kind of have a bit like Don't Worry Darling vibes, which is the women who are the wives of the astronauts have to live a very certain life, and they're very in the public eye, and they have to do certain things. It's like the women struggling with that and what it means. It deals a
Yeah.
lot with like the LGBTQ plus community at that time and like the struggles they had, because
Hmm.
people worried that if the Russians found out you were gay, that it could be held against you. They could use you then to be exploited against your country and these things. So it's all these really interesting facets. The lead writer and creator is Ronald D. Moore, who did Battlestar Galactica, which is one of the Reed thing, which is one of my favorite ever TV shows.
Hmm.
Anyway, so I was always going to like this. But production value, everything, it looks like a Hollywood film, genuinely. Like the CG and everything's really good. It's shot in that documentary style. So when the
Right.
ship's far away, it like does crash zooms in and
Yeah.
absolutely love it. But the score's by Jeff Russo, who's done some of the recent Star Trek series. And I said to Jamie, it's the only program recently that has made me like genuinely
I
cry at one
laughed.
point.
I cried. I fist pumped the air.
No, but like my message to you is pretty much that. There was an
Yeah, it was,
episode where I
yeah.
was literally screaming at the TV. So what they do really well is they sell the awe and the allure of the moon and travel and space and like the human condition to go and all those things that
Mhm.
I really personally like love the ideals of and buy into. But
Yeah.
it also makes you realize very quickly it's really, really dangerous here. They are literally in a tin bucket and
Yeah,
it
yeah.
can go wrong really fast. As it goes ahead, obviously the technology's kind of jumping because it's kind of like if we had done this at this point, then we would have advanced at this point and the army would have done this. So electric
Yeah.
cars exist in like the early 80s, for example, or whatever. So the further it
Oh,
goes
that's
through,
interesting.
the less
Okay.
it's like where we're at. But it's
Yeah.
funny as well, slight spoiler, when they jump ahead 10 years, they do like a little trailer so you can see how the world did change. So John
Yeah.
Lennon never died. and he's a
Right.
pain in the ass to the Americans because he's a big supporter of the Communist Party.
Right.
And
That's
it's just
hilarious.
like it's stuff like that, or like Camilla and Prince Charles married the first time around, so Diana never had a miserable time. So there's just like all these
Right.
like they're
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
main plot points, but it's just like
Just little
interesting,
like yeah,
like
little anecdotes.
scattered around. But it's really, really good. But there was a sequence where it was like an Apollo 13S situation, and I was literally I text Jamie like I'm AFK away from keyboard for the next hour because I'm just going to be shouting at the TV, and it's just so good.
Oh, wicked.
Thoroughly enjoyed it. Anyway,
Sounds
I'm
good.
very conscious. I've just spoke for about 15 minutes of things I've watched, which is
You get it. You're allowed, mate.
unheard of.
Yeah. Do you know there's been so many weeks where you've spoken for 15 minutes about nothing. Like, I don't mean
saw
that. That sounds
nothing.
bad, doesn't it? That
No,
that,
it's
that
good.
makes it sound like I'm saying that you say nothing. What was I going to say? Do you know when I said I laughed, I cried, I fist pumped the air? Do you know? Do you know what I was doing?
No, what's that from?
It's Richard E. Grant when he was when he just come out of
Saltburn.
the. No, 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 no. When he just come out of the screening of Rise of Skywalker, because he's in Rise of Skywalker, isn't he?
Oh God,
And he
yeah.
did that thing where he's like, I laugh, I cry, and I fist pump the air. But he does this thing with his teeth. And like, actually, the mug I was drinking from earlier was a Limmy mug. So Limmy's a Scottish comedian who's
Yeah.
hilarious, and Limmy done that. He does a really good impression of Richard E. Grant, and he was doing that as like a on Twitter or whatever. And Richard E. Grant seen it and was like raging, so he blocked him. And then
That's funny.
everyone was like, "Oh, now Richard, like he does it all the time. Like it's just a joke. It's just a joke." So Richard's like, "Oh, okay, cool, yeah." Unblocks him, and then Limmy like just cracks on, carries on again. Really funny. Anyway, yeah. So what have I been watching? Oh, do you know what? I've got some good stuff to talk about actually. So I watched The Holdovers, which if maybe it's not out in the UK yet. Maybe I flew to America and watched it, or maybe I didn't. But I watched it. Okay, so I watched The Holdovers, which is new film by Alexander Payne. Bit of a weird one, really. Like as in why it's not out in the UK yet, because it's essentially a Christmas film. Alexander Payne, actually, who also did Election and he did a film called Sideways, has this like really just dark sense of humor, like great writer. So The Holdovers stars Paul Giamatti, Dominic Sessa, Davine Joy Randolph, and it's basically about a tutor, I guess, at a New England prep school, and he's forced to remain on campus during Christmas break to basically like look after these students who have nowhere to go because their parents don't really. They're like really like quite posh students, and the parents don't want them home for Christmas. And essentially, it's basically just about the story of them being on campus and spending time with each other. And it sounds boring. It's over 2 hours. I'm telling you now, it's such a special film. This is coming out really soon. I think it's coming out next week, or the week of when this releases. So please seek this out if you can. I think it's going to be a modern classic. The complexity of the characters, the storytelling, you can tell it's going to be like really rewarding on the rewatch. I think there's a film probably every 10 years or so that makes me feel like a certain way, and it's hard to describe. Like Perks of Being a Wallflower did the same. The only way I was sitting there, I was like, I don't know how to feel. It's like emotionally nostalgic, if that makes sense. And I don't know what that means, but it felt right to like describe it like that. Paul Giamatti's performance is he's such a nuanced character and complicated. They're all complicated, and it's just kind of a slice of life film where you're spending time with these characters and you feel just this certain way. I'll be watching it every single year. It's so special, and I love it. And I think that if we're going to talk about films, best films of the year, it's really between that and Godzilla for me. Like I really, really loved it. So when that comes out, I'll probably go and see it at the cinema as well. I already did see it at the cinema, you know. So yeah, I then watched. I bought the 4K because I had to. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Mutant Mayhem, which
It's
is
good.
yeah, directed by Jeff Rowe, who hadn't done anything actually, and he's directing a second one, which is really exciting. This is quite a weird one because I said that about holdovers. I feel like this is in the same vein of quality as Into the Spider Verse. The art style is extremely interesting. It's like almost like hand sketched. You can
It's
see in
like
certain,
graffiti almost
yeah,
at certain sequences. I watched the the Corridor Crew do the VFX React. They have
yeah,
an
yeah, yeah,
animation one specifically, and they
yeah.
did a whole episode about it, and it just looks. They basically talked about how Spider-Verse opened the style for audiences understanding different ways of animation. Because
Okay,
before it's always been Pixar way or like the Illumination with the Minions, and that's kind of been the style. And then all of a sudden, people are like, "Oh, Spider-Verse is amazing! Spider-Verse is amazing! It looks like nothing I've ever seen before." And the animators are like, "We can do this stuff. It's just you don't want it. It doesn't
yeah,
sell." Whilst now you can. And like Ninja Turtles, I've only seen the trailer to be fair in this breakdown, but it looks
yeah.
incredible, like the different artwork styles. And Puss in Boots too had a
Yeah,
sequence like that,
so
didn't
I was
it?
about to say that to you. So I watched that a few weeks ago. Again, a really interesting art style. The one thing I would say is that I dread to think how I would imagine the way I don't mean to be derogatory to Pixar or Disney Studios, but the way they're churning these films out now, which is they are churning them out, if I'm being quite honest, really quickly compared to what it used to be. Like we've had like I want to say a 4 year gap between Across the Spider Verse and Into the Spider Verse. So I worry that we'll get the same kind of thing with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles because of how nuanced the art style is and how I don't know
Mm.
complicated it is. But then at the same time, they'd probably just get AI at some point. I would imagine to figure out how the art style goes. I don't really know. I hope that's not the case because it'll put people out of jobs. But um, really good. We've got Ayo Edibiri, who's actually we see her. She's been in loads of stuff now. She's also in Across the Spider Verse. She's in The Bear, and she's in Bottoms, like comedian. She's really funny, like great voice actor. She is April O'Neil. This is just basically about the turtles as teenagers, and they're trying to
Played by
become
actual teenagers.
yeah, they're trying to become accepted. The voice of Splinter is voiced by Jackie Chan, and it's absolutely hilarious. He's so funny in it. There's a scene that I've watched like I've watched it twice now, since I've had it. Like, and my other half watched it as well. Like she watched it while I was out, and absolutely loved it as well. I would say that even if you don't like turtles, it's hilarious. It's got like the needle drops in it, 90s R&B slash hip hop. It's brilliant, like so much fun. So yeah, I watched that, which I'd massively recommend. I think that'll be on Paramount Plus soon because it is a Paramount film.
Can I just interject there? You know, you talk about Disney animations. So do you remember Claire came on and talked about Wish and said it got
Yeah.
critically like bombed quite a lot? At the time, a lot of people were talking about they didn't like the animation style and it looked like AI did it. So do you know why this is?
Oh
Because it's actually quite interesting because
no, I don't know.
it's not AI at
It's
all.
not. Okay.
Wish is the idea of like lots of storybooks, and it was referencing back to like old school Disney. So
Yeah.
frame cell animation used to be, every second frame. So if there's 24 frames per second, you could animate 12 of the frames, and there's like a significant movement, and you could see it.
Yeah.
Now, when later down the line in special effects, we add motion blur in between those frames. So if my hand's moving like this, you'll see it blurs. But in animation, it would be like this dot
Yeah.
dot 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 dot. Not this is not very good for people listening, but there we go. And essentially, what they decided to do to make Wish look more like the classic Disney films, they turned the motion blur off. But then audiences
Right.
said, "Oh, it looks janky and it
Like
looks
cheap.
fake and it looks cheap," and they were like, we've spent all this time creating this effect and not doing it and making the animation style so specific to that old hand-drawn style. But the truth is people associate it with the hand-drawn style. They
Okay.
don't associate it with the CG
So
style.
here's a good question for you then. So this is me defending Disney for once. If Disney had not made this and it was another studio, do you think people would have looked at the art style differently, or they're expecting a certain thing from Pixar or Disney? What
I think
Disney
that
Studios?
I think that when you think Pixar or Disney,
expect,
you
yeah.
think this looked, and I think they tried to do something different. And I think, to be honest, it should be applauded for that because they were trying to do it, but the
Yeah.
intention just didn't come across well enough. But it's interesting because we've just talked about two key films: Into the Spider-Verse, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and
Wish.
Puss in Boots 2.
Oh, specifically.
Sorry, and Wish. But my point being, all those three films have been praised for doing
Yeah.
that different style. But then I
Yeah.
think the Pixar one wasn't different enough. Does that make
Okay.
sense? It's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
it was like, oh, it looks different, but it doesn't look
Yeah.
like, so it got caught in that uncanny valley weirdly. Anyway,
Mm-hmm.
enough about that. Just thought it'd be an interesting insight.
No, thanks for the little anecdote. I've got the Criterion box set of the Before trilogy. So I finally got the guts to watch it. This is Richard Linklater film. He's released there's a trilogy, so there's three of them, but they're all like many years apart, like he does. He likes the kind of film life, I guess. This is about a young man and woman, played by Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy. They meet on a train in Europe, and they end up spending one evening together in Vienna. And this is basically one of those films where I don't know if I could. Again, I couldn't recommend it to the casual movie watcher because they would probably turn around and be like, nothing happened. The film is about them two and their relationship over this 24-hour period, or less, maybe slightly less than that. About them connecting so hard and falling in love almost. And I'm not going to spoil what happens, but the second film obviously involves them two. The third film involves them two, like later on down the line. Really like has this like melancholic feel throughout it. The dialogue's written really naturalistic. Like it's great. Like I thoroughly enjoyed it. But it's one of those films where it's like you've got to be in the right mood because it's not a film to watch if you've just had a breakup, you know. Like it's brutal.
Leaving Las Vegas.
Yeah, exactly.
That
it's
vibe.
it's not.
Yeah.
It's not. I would say it's quite melancholic, but it's really beautiful. Like to the point of where like I sound like I'm not that hot on it. I gave it 9 out of 10. Like it's brilliant.
Oh, wow, okay.
But it's also tough going. I then watched Back to the Future Part 3, directed by Robert Zemeckis.
See, I said to Jamie when he said this, I was like, Back to the Future. I said I didn't particularly like westerns as a kid. I still don't massively love them now. So I used to hate Part 3. I used to be like, because I love 2 because of the future and the hoverboards. Like everything's kind of sold at me. And then 3's like, do you want a steam train? I'm like, not really.
Yeah, mate. But I mean, I think that's
just saying. Yeah. But I tell you what though, I've seen 3 fairly recently because they're all on. Is it ITV that play them all the time? And it was way better than I remembered.
That's great. Like, no, it's really fun. It's really fun. Essentially, they go to the Wild West, and again,
do the same beats as the previous film, but it's cool.
Yeah,
but,
basically,
it's great.
Basically, it's probably chicken? I love the Wild. Yeah,
Yellow Belly.
Yeah, that's it. I think it's still got the charm of the previous 2. Arguably, the most exciting sequence out of the trilogy, in my opinion, in terms of the end. The end sequence, and the train. I think that's the most exciting high budget sequence out of the trilogy. I then watched them.
Probably is, to be fair.
Yeah,
Have you seen the clip of the kid that weirdly grabs his crotch and like looks at camera?
What? Where?
At the end of Back to the Future 3.
No.
They're like there's a whole thing about look at this weird kid at the end,
and he just grabs his crotch.
Yeah, it's really weird. It's really strange. Anyway, bringing the tone down. Keep going.
Yeah, I hope someone's spoken to him. I wonder what happened to him, eh? He was like...
I think he's been interviewed about it. I swear. Anyway, right, keep going.
He's probably... I was about to... No, never mind. Right, this is... Yeah, just shut your mouth, Jamie, or you're going to get cancelled. Then watch The Stepford Wives, directed by Frank Oz, 2004. I've not seen it before.
Yoda directed a film. Who knew?
Pardon?
Yoda directed a film. Who knew?
Yeah. So Yoda directed Little Shop of Horrors and The Dark Crystal and Muppets in Manhattan. Like, it's crazy. So anyway, Stepford Wives directed by Yoda, starring Nicole Kidman, Matthew Broderick, Bette Midler, Glenn Close, Christopher Walken. What a cast.
I've seen that film as well, many years ago.
You've seen it? Mm-hmm. Well done, you. That's a surprise, really. So I would say that, like, I understand that Don't Worry Your Darling's very, like, borrowed lots of ideas from it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not been reviewed well, but I enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun with it. It's obviously it's a film about these people that go and move. It's a film about a woman who is very high power, high performing woman, and she gets fired, and they go to live in this kind of paradise place. Well, it's paradise for the men, isn't it? And it's a bit strange. You don't really know what's going on. Like the women, they don't have jobs.
Reminded me of The Village at the
unravels.
time.
Never seen The Village by M. Night Shyamalan.
I don't know, shut up. But that has a similar kind of like going to a place that's really different, but at the time not being sure why or how. And I felt like Stepford Wives had that vibe, as did Don't Worry Darling.
Yeah. I see good food at competitive prices. That's like really niche from Family Guy in like 2006. Anyway, that reminds me of the time I did a an advert in the style of M. Night Shyamalan. And it's like Peter Griffin, like, anyway, never mind. I watched Sonic the Hedgehog 2. I mean, the story is the story. I'm not even going to bother. It's a lot longer than it needs to be. And I felt like, I know it's a CGI hedgehog, but I felt like there was a little bit of an overuse of CGI. It went very like, I don't mean on the act.
Hedgehog needs to be more realistic.
No, I don't mean
get
on
a real hedgehog and paint him blue. Come on,
I don't
guys.
mean on the actual hedgehog, but I mean like
definitely peaked then. Sorry, guys.
the whole thing's a green screen. The whole thing is a green screen. Everything.
Was it shot during COVID though? To be fair, which is probably part of it, production wise.
Yeah, it probably was because came out in 2022. It's pretty fun. I laughed out loud a few times. Jim Carrey again, like from the first one, is back to his best. I prefer the first one. I think the first one is much better. It's got Idris Elba stars as Knuckles. He's great. It's
Knuckles
a Sonic
is
film.
badass.
You know, it's a Sonic film. It's good fun. But do you know what did happen during that film? I ordered a KFC, which I don't do very often, and I ordered a Colonel 4-piece chicken meal. Right? Get this. I'll be honest. I lost my mind. My chicken meal arrived, my 4-piece chicken meal, and I open it. It's like 9:30 at night. I open it. There's 4 sets of chips in there. No chicken.
Mate.
4 sets of chips and no chicken.
Someone's trolling.
I'll tell you what. I was mildly upset, and when I say mildly, I mean raging. Two more to talk about, and we're 41 minutes in. This is
That's
bad.
right. Yeah.
This is bad. Right, I do need to talk about this though.
Chop.
I watched a film called When Evil Lurks by Demian Runia. This is on Shudder. This is a possession film about a small rural town. It's a Spanish or Mexican. I'm not 100% sure, so I am sorry. I want to say it might. Do you know what? If it turns out it's Argentinian, I'm in big trouble. But something like that.
We'll find out.
Residents of a small rural town discover that a demon is about to be born among them. They desperately try to escape before the evil is born, but it may be too late. Now, I'm pretty numb to most horror films at this point, but this has a couple of extraordinarily disturbing scenes in it, to the point of where I was like, out loud, wow, like I can't believe they've done that. Some stuff that I've never even seen on film before. Like,
was it like the subway sequence in that film that I forgot the name of? That was horrendous and horrifying. Well, it wasn't.
I don't know, but there's a couple.
The one when the woman birthed the demon in the subway.
Oh, possession, yeah.
That's one of the freakiest things I've ever witnessed.
Way worse. Way worse.
Okay.
There's a scene with a dog and a child. That's all I'll say.
Right,
and it's like it's absolutely and then there's another scene towards the end. It goes pure Children of the Corn at the end. Towards the end, it's when I say like a possession film, like a demon should be evil. So like in The Exorcist, like when Reagan gets taken over by what's it called, John? Pazuzu. When Reagan gets taken over by Pazuzu, like it's evil, but there's the stuff that this demon does, put it this way, is just wild, and it just like goes from person to person to person, and it's like it's an hour and a half, and it's just this roller coaster. Like it feels very frenetic and just quite stressful all over. We'll speak about stressful scenes in a bit. And then finally, I watched Wild Things. Wild Things is a film from 1998 by John
Denise Richards and Neve Campbell. That one.
Yeah, John McNaughton.
I've seen it.
You've seen it?
Yeah.
I bet you have, you pervert.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. But yeah, I mean, it's got Kevin Bacon.
It's a 90s thriller with Kevin Bacon.
Yeah, it's a 90s thriller with
sexy
Kevin.
90s thriller is the way to describe it.
Yeah, I wouldn't say people. I mean, it's out there as like an erotic thriller. I wouldn't say it's erotic. Kevin Bacon, Matt Dillon, Neve Campbell, Denise Richards, Bill Murray. Again, absolute. Carrie Snodgrass. It's got a brilliant cast. This is about like. Do you know what? It would go really well with Cruel Intentions, I think.
Similar year.
Yeah,
era.
yeah, exactly. It just had that. You know what? Right.
That feel.
Something about the 90s, like that vibe, that like just like sexy vibe, but not too sexy kind of thing.
That's what Saltburn felt like for me. That kind of night, like, because I know Emerald Fennell loves Cruel Intentions, but that kind of like weird, sexy thriller, dark undertone vibe. But anyway, sorry, continue.
I mean, you did mention Neve Richards. Oh God, imagine combining them. That'd be like a Megazord of beauty. Anyway, this is basically just about a student. So Denise Richards, like a student, she's like probably the equivalent of like what's her name from Mean Girls? The Plastics, like the Regina George.
Regina
She's the
George.
equivalent of like your Regina George, but a bit older. And she basically accuses her guidance counselor, Sam Lombardo, who is played by Matt Dillon. She accuses him of rape. So he's suspended by the school. It's pretty like it goes really dark really fast.
Yeah.
And then he's basically just trying to prove them wrong. And then you've got Neve. She gets Neve Campbell in on it as well to also accuse him of rape. And actually, the man's just trying to live his life. So but it's got some really great twists in there. So I mean, it's trashy, a little bit trashy, but
They kind of are in those 90s thrillers. Like, they've got that element of just being that little bit cheese. There's a bit of cheese hammed in there.
It's certainly not 6 out of 10. Like, it's better than that. Like, there's a lot of like some
It's not
pretty.
great. Seven's a push, but yeah. 6.5.
John, you gave Rebel Moon a 7, so you got no leg to stand on.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Okay.
I'll just shut up.
Yeah, just stop
I've got
there.
one point before we get on to Babylon, which I need to address, by the way.
46 minutes in.
46 minutes in. How do you say chocolate? How do you pronounce chocolate?
I say chocolat. Have you never heard me say chocolat before? No, of course I don't know. I say, get us a bit of chocky. Chocolate. What do you mean?
I should have said this. There's a link. I should have linked back to this very much at the start. My main complaint about Timothy Chalamet and Wonka was the way he says chocolate.
Chocolate.
10 things that in my pocket. And then he says chocolate. And it's just really...
Do you think it's so they can rhyme chocolate with pocket?
It is, but they follow it through the whole film.
Do they? So he says chocolate the whole film.
The whole film.
Like, to style out. Why would they not have? Why would they not have changed the word pocket instead?
And once you know it, you can't unknow it. Do you know what I mean? Like, once you picked it up,
what's the lyrics? What's the lyrics? I'm about to solve their
10
problem straight
silver
away.
sovereigns in my pocket. And the only thing I brought with me is my chocolate.
Right, here we go. I fixed it
A
already.
hat full of dreams.
I fixed it already. 10 silver sovereigns in my hat. I've got chocolate or something. What's it go next?
Well, you've kind of.
And
I'll do.
I've got
hat
dreams
full of
in my
dreams.
pocket. There we go. I fixed it anyway. So never mind. Is it who directed that?
Paddington director. I've forgotten the name off.
Isn't it Adam McKay? No, it's not, is it? What am I talking about? Anyway, hire me. We're about to talk about a proper film now, not that Wonka. I'm joking. Timothy Chalamet. Just give me another reason to hate him. Imagine this. Do you know what's funny? Imagine somehow we get massive and we end up getting Timothy Chalamet on the pocket. On the pocket.
I don't know why you don't like him. I will ask him about saying chocolate if I get to speak to him.
Yeah, cool. And
imagine just out of curiosity, just be like, why chocolate?
Like, imagine his career goes like right down the sewer, and he's coming on Movies in a Pod Shell with Jamie and Jon, or Jon and Jamie, whoever you think's the most important, and he listens to our whole back catalogue just to vet us, and he comes on, he's like, so
he's not listening.
So tell me about it. Anyway, we're going to talk about whoa. We're into Silence the Talkies, aren't we? Do you know much about Silence the Talkies, John?
No, a bit.
Yeah, I know a wee bit. Yeah, I bought a book and didn't read it. Anyway, we're going to talk about Damien Chazelle. 2020. Whoa, depending on where you're from, 2023, 2024. No, it's definitely not 2024. 2022 or 2023. We're talking about Babylon.
I think what we have here in Hollywood is high art. It's
Party time! Sparkle time! If you could go anywhere in the whole world, where would you go?
I always want to be part of something bigger.
Yes.
Let's go!
So, John, so I had no idea what to expect because I want to say this film had a little bit mixed reviews. It had a lot, I would say a lot of film fans loved it, but yeah, it's had quite mixed reviews. A 3-hour epic. I definitely think this is Damien Chazelle went out there and he wanted to demolish the expectations of a period piece. And oh, does he do that? Because it's an 18.
Apparently he'd been researching this for like 12 years and it took him so long to actually like commit to filming it because he just loved investigating the era, because it's an era which has always been presented in a very romantic style previously, a very like rose tinted glasses. This film isn't that. I will start off the bat. I think the first words that come to my head to describe this film are, it's very vulgar, it's very brash, it's very
Vulgar.
No, but it is, and it's very like, it's bombastic. It reminds me of the opening 20 minutes of Moulin Rouge, where it feels like
We're on
being
the same page.
clubbed over the head, boom,
Yeah.
boom, 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 and it's very visceral. Not to say I didn't like it, but it's an incredibly intense experience. The opening, it takes, was it 30 minutes until the title Babylon even comes on the screen?
Yeah, 35 minutes to see the word Babylon come on screen,
and, you know, okay, you go right into it, you are essentially seeing a party play out in Hollywood in the 1920s and seeing literally, like, normally if you see a party in the 1920s, let's say, for example, like in Singing in the Rain or in other films, it's like, oh, like, everything's following film rating standards, so everything's really PG. This is like a mass orgy and a guy being peed on, and
have you ever attended a party like that?
Elephant,
Does Piggy like that? No.
Elephants pooing over people with like mass loads of diarrhea. It's very like, oh my god, like sensory.
You need to live a little, John.
The soundtrack, it's the same composer, Justin
Hurwitz,
who did La La Land and First Man, etc.
And I think you can tell.
And it's very much got leitmotifs of tracks from La La Land. Now, for me, La La Land is kind of a, if you work hard and, like, you know, you stick to your craft, like, you can achieve great success, and LA and Hollywood is part of that dream. And then, like, this is kind of like Hollywood will chew you up, spit you out, and you're done.
Yeah.
But you'll be part of something greater. So is it worth it? So there is still an element of that overarching theme of being part of something. Like in La La Land, it's all about, I want to be part of the music industry. I want to be part of being part of Hollywood fame. And this film is like, it shows people attaining that and losing it, or people who are experiencing it for the first time, or people who are already at the top and the only way is down, right? And people who can't accept it. And we'll get into it, but the latter part of the film, there's other characters who do accept their fate, as it were, and have realizations around it. Babylon is like one of the title, you know, the read on it is, it was like the most decadent city, wasn't it, in the biblical times, and then it suffered the worst fate, etc. And again, this film is kind of like watching someone pour petrol on a burning building. Do you know what I mean, in terms of like how it kicks up? So yeah, let's go synopsis.
Yeah, so this is it's basically a story about, well, it's just the rise and fall of these four characters, well, multiple characters really, during the early mid 20s to early 30s. We see just the rise and fall of kind of these, well, I would say it's four characters mainly. So what we have is we've got Jack Conrad, who's played by Brad Pitt. And in actual fact, Jack Conrad is the Brad Pitt of his day, we would say. We've got Diego Calva playing Manny Torres, and I was like, oh, Diego Calva playing Manny Torres, my favorite character. But then I'm like, oh no, but then Margot Robbie as well. We've got Margot Robbie playing Nellie Leroy, and we've got Jovan Adepo playing Sidney Palmer. Now, these different people, we've got Jack Conrad, the Brad Pitt character, is the movie star. He's the silent movie star. He's the heartthrob. He's at the top of his game. He's the probably out of all of these people in the best position. He's a success. We've got Diego Calva, who is an immigrant, I think he's Mexican. He is and do you know what? Culturally, there's some really important parts of this film that I will touch upon as a white man. But Diego Calva playing Manny Torres is fantastic, and we've got him that's he will do anything it takes.
He's like a production runner. I mean, runners these day and age don't do things that bad. I mean,
no,
but essentially he's a fixer, isn't he? Like, he supplies the drugs for the stars. He gets people home when they're too drunk to drive home at the end of the night, and he also deals with elephants that have excessive diarrhea. So he's basically seen as like, he's hired by the studio to keep everyone happy and to clean up everyone's problems, and
he will do whatever it takes to break into Hollywood.
And then by the end of the first act, the first 30 minutes of the film is essentially seeing this party, and he allows Nellie Leroy in, which is Margot Robbie's character. And at that party, she basically acts like a star and believes that to be a star, you have to act like a star. And she's like, I've always been a star. I'm not acting. This is me. And then him letting her in is the start of her being spotted.
Yeah.
And getting her first role, and
you can tell she's not a star though as well. She's from I've heard it described as she's from the wrong side of the tracks. Like that's the way I watched the actual. I was quite annoyed actually because the 4K I've got of Babylon, it's got special features on it, but there's no director's commentary, which I was actually fuming about.
That's weird.
Yeah, it is weird. But there is like a 30-minute piece on like the making of Babylon, and it was saying that like the costume design of this film, like everything's handmade. The one thing about Margot Robbie's character when we first see her is she's not turning up glamorous. She's turning up in an outfit that's quite revealing, that she looks like she could have put it together herself. She's got this very like what you would describe as common accent, really. It's like very like Brooklyn. No offense to the Brooklyners out there, but
the Harley
you know
Quinn
what I'm
accent doing the works again.
Yeah, she's got the Harley Quinn Wolf of Wall Street kind of thing going on, and I loved actually seeing her like this because of all the Barbie discourse, and that's all you've been hearing over the last kind of probably like 18 months. Like I kind of forgot that there was this version of Margot Robbie that existed. The version that we see in The Wolf of Wall Street, and
I think this is her best performance because if
it's the work she's most proud of. She says,
"I, Tonya" is one I actually rate quite highly. I don't know if you saw that because I feel like that was a real character piece and becoming someone else. But this for me, I thought was her best performance because the amount of things she's got going. It's a very complex character. She's I wouldn't even say she's an alcoholic at the start, but essentially her downfall is the success gets to her head. And she's a party animal. She's taken excessive amounts of cocaine when we meet her for the first time anyway. But
there's piles of it, yeah.
But by the time we get to the end of the film, she is just not the same person. She's in constant trouble, and like the downfall of one of the other leading characters in this film is specifically through her actions and what she's doing. But yeah, it's kind of showing how the Hollywood system may be revered and looked back upon in a certain way because context at that point you were with film studios and you were signed to a studio on like a 5-year deal or what have you, and they looked after you and like that it, you know, you became a star and they own you.
We'll talk we'll talk about Singing in the Rain as well about this because this is really interesting for Debbie Reynolds. Yeah, so go on, carry on, sorry.
And then the character I actually enjoyed the most was, so it's Jean Smart plays Eleanor St. John, who is the journalist, and she talks about, there's a good speech where at the end, towards the latter end of the film, she talks about how like she's explained to Brad Pitt's character as the audio's coming through, you're a dying breed, like I can't remember the way she describes it, but she
basically you're a pack horse and your time is done.
You're done. And her point is, I'm a cockroach. I know like when to step in and when to step out, and I can, like, people don't pay attention to me. I can just be here and criticize you, but I'll always be here. And it's that idea of, she says something though very sweet within it, which is the fact of, don't you see, like, you will live forever. You will die and your body will go, but you survive in film, and people can turn on a TV. I shouldn't say TV because it wasn't then, but people will put a picture on and you will be there. And for that hour or whatever it may be, you are alive and preserved perfectly as you are, all these elements. And it's a very romantic, nostalgic way of looking at cinema, which I actually agree with and I think is true. But she caveats that with, but at the same time, by the way, you're done. This industry spat out many people, and it will do it again and again and again. And it's true. It's how it works. So we're in the IP era now rather than the personality era. Like, Cruise is probably one of the main people who can still draw people to a cinema to see a Tom Cruise film.
A Tom Cruise film instead of like a Captain America film, if that makes sense.
That's what I mean. Like, nowadays they sell on IP rather than stars, but in the 80s and 90s it was like Van Damme, Stallone,
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah, that's kind of what you went for. So I thought her character was great, and I really like that sequence. There's a good joke I like in this film, which is basically Jack Conrad, Brad Pitt's character, has a series of many wives. So his first wife we meet is Olivia Wilde, who plays Ina,
yeah.
and
Tomato,
she
tomato.
basically says, "Speak to me in Italian one more time, and I will divorce you." And like he just keeps pushing it till she just goes off. Great, and then throughout the film, every so often there's just like another wife he's with. It's good fun. One of the things Damien Chazelle talked about with this film is when he liked the idea of lots of movement going on within the background, comparing it to Apocalypse Now, how like there's not just what's going on in the foreground and the background, but like in the very background there's still like lateral movement or like other things. So the frame always seems really frantic. That to me is why I got the Moulin Rouge vibe.
Right,
Because you know, like that first 20 minutes of Moulin Rouge, it's just like, whoa. Just
like there's lens flare. It's really quite frantic.
Around. Like he loves that. Like, you know, the sequence when Ryan Gosling's playing the piano and Emma Stone's dancing and it does the whip like this. And like you get all those like key sequences, but it's done for like the most depraved Hollywood party and grim sequence you could see. And it starts with like really warm tones. Like there's like a lot can be seen of like the use of color in this film. So like Jamie pointed out, like the green I have behind me here, there's some sequences which are like odes to Vertigo and the use of color and like
there are, but I would say it's a little bit muted compared to Singing in the Rain, which I think do you know what, I was really quite proud of myself because I hadn't seen Babylon before, but I had seen Singing in the Rain. I was quite proud of myself that this is actually such a close link and companion piece.
Well, it's directly referenced essentially in
exactly, yeah, and that's why when people say Damien Chazelle's derivative, like I'm like, well, I wouldn't class him as in the same way I don't really class Quentin Tarantino as, because they're not. I wouldn't say they're stealing. Damien Chazelle's like, look, I've got the film in my film, and the one thing I would say is that I think this is a really cynical film and a cynical take on Hollywood and the Roaring '20s and what was going on compared to Singing in the Rain, which is much more magical.
It is, but the actual underlying message still isn't that cynical, because the underlying key theme for me was which is why I went back to the reporter journalist character, is her speech on you live within the film forever, you live within it, and for me, like I'm gonna go to the end of the film because it's
so spoilers
just for this point, there are spoilers for this. So essentially Manny finds himself in trouble, which we'll delve more into like how that comes about and what happens.
Yeah,
but he returns years later and he's out of film production. So previous to this, he's worked his way up through the system. The film is all about his rise. So he goes from a fixer, he goes to pick up a camera one day, and then they say,
he's got some really good ideas.
Can you do this? Then he becomes a director. Then he becomes like the talent manager for Margot Robbie's character, and he starts her whole rebrand, much like what we see throughout the plot of Singing in the Rain. But Margot Robbie's character, well, let's explain it now. We're here. Margot Robbie's character, Nellie Leroy, gets herself in so much trouble, and he has always loved her. She doesn't love him, is my take.
Yeah,
but he's always loved her.
No, you're right.
And essentially, to help and save her, he has to come up with some money, and he does. He gets himself in a situation which we'll delve more into later, because that's one of the grimmest sequences of the film. And then he disappears. He's told to disappear, so he disappears. When he comes back, the end sequence is him going to the cinema, and he's distraught because they are watching Singing in the Rain, the sequence where they're taking the mickey out of people getting used to the talkies, which is the whole film is about. That element of that film is talking about his life and what he lived through. And he starts to cry and weep because he's like, they are basically taking the piss out of something which ruined my life and like my friends' lives. However, he then has that moment of realizing at the start of the film, he has a chat with Margot Robbie, and it's like, why do you want to be Nellie Leroy's character? Nellie Leroy, why do you want to be in films? And it's because I want to be part of something greater. I want to be remembered. I want this, I want that. And he goes from crying to starting to smile and laughing in that cinema because he realizes he is part of something greater. And the fact there's a film made documenting about that change is in itself a big deal, that he was part of that. And those talking pictures exist, and that sound exists because of like the work he did. So it's him like coming to terms with that, which is why he smiles at the end. I don't like the end montage, by the way. It feels a bit weird for me, because you then see a montage of sequences going from, I don't know, 1920s, 30s.
He likes
all the way
doing that,
through.
though, doesn't he, Damien Chazelle?
Yeah, but it's nowhere near like the La La Land one, and it's nowhere near the First Man landing on the moon one for
I've
me.
not seen it, so
So it's
that's the only one of his I've not seen. Yeah,
but the track is that da 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 da, which is the jazz motif we have at the start of the film, right at the start,
which
playing
I
at the
think is
end.
very similar to
It's
La La
got
Land.
yes, it is, and there's a sequence where in um when Emma Stone's character is going to the party, that's someone in the crowd. You know, you're going to the party, you're going to find out someone is going to pick you out. That
Yeah.
motif is used later in the film as everything's going wrong in
Yeah.
Babylon, which is interesting. So, sorry, I know we're kind of jumping around all over the shop here, but it's quite a difficult film to kind of.
Yeah. No, it is. Yeah.
It's
Oh.
it for me. I last point from my quick overview was I remember saying to Jamie, this feels like his Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Like, absolutely feels like.
Yeah, you feel like Brad is playing the Brad Pitt. Brad, you know, my mate Brad.
My mate.
Brad Pitt is playing the Leonardo DiCaprio character. Like for me, like
adjusting to the change of like how Hollywood's changing, and you either adapt or you don't.
I do. I think this is. I do think this film is. I think in years to come. I know. Do you know what? I was thinking about this day. I'm like, when I'm on the pod, I feel like I'm always just like I love everything, and that's genuinely not the case because we do criticize things, and we criticized Rebel Moon last week. But for this, and I hadn't seen it before, so I didn't know whether I was going to like it or not. And I do just like film. I think this is going to be over the next 10 years. It's going to be one of the greats. Like over the next 15 years, it's going to be one of the greats in terms of like
cinematography, production design,
yeah,
and choreography is the big thing.
Story as well. I genuinely think story as well. I think there's so many deep themes and stuff. Like it explores all these things. Like we explore these four characters because I'm going to talk about Sydney as well because he's a really important character in this. The way it shows us what the culture of Hollywood was like and just the culture of America as well. Yeah. I think is really interesting. And we see like after this lavish party at the beginning, we see everyone except Brad Pitt who goes home to his big house. Everyone goes back to their very working class lives, small houses, dirty houses, messy houses, sleeping on chairs, that kind of thing. And they're just trying to make it in Hollywood. And we do see a character called Sydney. I don't know whether he's called Sydney as a nod to Sidney Poitier.
Maybe.
I'm not sure, but he's a musician. He's not interested in Hollywood in terms of the being in Hollywood kind of thing. Like he wants to perform at the highest level. At this party at the moment, he is just providing the entertainment at the party, which arguably you would say is one of the I don't know, the jobs that are looked down upon, I guess, like compared to all the movie stars there, that kind of thing. He's at the top of his game. Like we see him having like arguing with the people that he's in the band with, saying like you need to sort your shit out, like, or if you play flat one more time, I'm gonna headbutt you. That's what he says, and I just thought that was really funny. Like, but he is at the top of his game. He cares so much because he knows that those musicians who are black, and that's an important point. They've got to be like 10 times better than any white musician that's there as well. Otherwise, they won't get the parts. And so he's trying to capitalize on sound being introduced into film, in which he does. He's about to get everything he ever wants in terms of playing at the highest level. And what we see is by Jovan Adepo, who is brilliant in this. We see what it costs a black man at that time to be at the top of the game. And he is the one out of all four of them that says, no, like, I'm not going to sell my soul to Hollywood. I'm not going to sell my soul to the devil. There's a really like poignant scene that I didn't even know this was a thing where Manny is kind of, he's a director now and he's coming up with these great ideas. Like he's saying
he turns around and they say, what do we do with talking pictures? And he's like, you turn the camera around, you focus on the orchestra or the band.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
That's the interest. Like that's the thing. Like,
so he's quite revolutionary in the ideas that he's had. This Mexican, and again, it's following culture. It's showing you that this Mexican guy is like kind of breaking down all these barriers that would have been in the way for him, like really difficult for him. But he's that talented and has these such great ideas that yeah. And again, we'll talk about Margot Robbie and why she managed to sort of break into Hollywood. The Yeah, so we see Manny goes up to when we are moving from silent films to talkies or like yeah, talking pictures. Manny goes up to Sydney and he says, I need you to wear this." And it's basically it's black face paint to, and I didn't know that I was only aware actually that it was white people that would do blackface.
Like in Lawrence of Arabia with
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
A blackface jump scare, as one of friend of the show says, and she'll know who she is. So we see in that point that he's been given this black face paint, and he's devastated. He's like, "What? Why?" And he says, "Oh, it's because of the lights. Like it's because of the lighting or something." And I never even knew that was a thing. And I like Jovan Adepo says in an interview that it was a sensitive scene, and he even felt that whatever Sydney had at that point, he lost in that moment. His dignity, everything. Like he knew at that point they would just hang him out and wring him dry.
And then
Sydney
he plays at
walks.
like a local club, doesn't he? Like later,
Yeah, he
and
walks
he's
away
like
from Hollywood at
happier.
that point. He's one of the only he's the only one out of all of them. He walks away from Hollywood and he plays at a real jazz club. And Manny, on the other hand, sells his soul to the devil pretty much. But what I found interesting about that, because I then researched why would black actors wear blackface? Like why would that be a thing? And so I researched it, and there's a really really good video actually. I would tell you to go anyone to go watch it. Margot Jefferson. It's called Margot Jefferson on the history of black performers wearing blackface, and it's on CBS Sunday morning. And it's Margot Jefferson is a black author. She's done loads of stuff, but she speaks really like eloquently about it. And now all I'm doing is regurgitating what she said, because I learned something from her. And she basically said that audiences back then it was to make white audiences more comfortable. And it was almost they would ask black people to wear this blackface in order to almost make a caricature out of them. So it was more it wasn't so scary, I guess, because there was just the way black people were perceived in America at the time. She said, "Let's be honest, America was racist." It's a 3-minute video. She obviously talks about it much. I've watched it twice, but I tried to watch it more, so I don't want to misquote her basically. So
Yeah.
just go and watch it. But I found the cultural stuff from Damien Chazelle, the stuff he put in there was really interesting. And obviously, yeah, I think the film would benefit, like a lot of these 3-hour films that we've been watching lately, like Killers of the Flower Moon, they really do. They would benefit from probably like lots of multiple watches, because there's so much in there to take in. I always feel bad about talking about it, like for half an hour on a podcast, because I can't do it justice, and I won't be able to do Singing in the Rain justice, a film that's immortalized over 75 years. So yeah,
This was almost 40 minutes longer as well. The initial cut was 40 minutes longer, and I feel like
I would like to see it.
yeah, because he wasn't sure which plot lines to kind of spend more time with. And he had so many aspects he wanted to go through. So as you say, you've got Sydney's group, you've got Manny, you've got like so the trailer's kind of implied that Margot Robbie and Brad Pitt were in the film together a lot, whilst actually they probably have like one scene.
Yeah. They're not together a lot.
They're not together in it. And when I said the comparison to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I want to be clear. It's not because of Brad Pitt and Margot Robbie, although it might sound like it's because of that. It's really not. It's more so the themes about adjusting to the change in Hollywood. Like Leonardo DiCaprio's character is the fallen star on the way down, but then he ends up in the spaghetti westerns and ends up on the way back up. And like that's kind of what you think.
I gotta be in Italian films,
Italian movies.
That's
And then,
very funny.
Jack Conrad's Brad Pitt's character, you feel like he might try and make a go of it in talkies, and he has that moment where he does the one film and it goes terribly, and he's like done. But also in the film, he has a producer friend who is the guy who has the toilet seat stuck in his head, who falls in love really easily. And when he passes away in the film, essentially, and he loses all his confidence. If his friend would have stayed alive, then I feel like he would have given it a go. But because he's gone, he's just kind of lost his. Tell you what it reminds me of, when it's going bad for Jack Conrad, Brad Pitt's character. It's like, you know, that quote when it's like, oh, you never realise you're in the heyday until it's over. Like you
Yeah.
don't like, and I do think that is a true thing. Like there's so many moments where you just take things for granted, then like after it's finished, and you just kind of go like, that was like a really amazing point in life that you just didn't really think about in that way. I feel
When
like
you're at uni, when you're at
not
uni
even
and you're
that
not
really.
like,
I
no.
just, but just
No,
like
I tell you what. First day of the summer holidays,
what school
Blink
like where you're
Blink
like
182,
yeah
Blink 182, All the Small Things is playing,
yeah
and you're going out to play footy. How about that?
sitting in the park with friends at like 16 years old for like a 4 hour day and not realizing
First kiss,
how mm, yeah
first
all
time.
right. Okay.
Never mind.
Anyway, my point being, I feel like that's kind of where his character's at. He realizes too late that he's taken it all for granted and he's kind of abused the industry. But the
Yeah.
flip side of that is the industry's abused him in the fact that he's just
It abuses everyone. That's the thing. That's what I'm saying. I think it's a
He all
cynical
wins.
look at Hollywood.
yeah. So when we get into what like why Manny disappeared, so we said Margot Robbie got into trouble. She essentially gets into gambling,
Loads of debt. Yeah,
a load of debt, and
$80,000 or something crazy.
which
in
for
them
that
days.
era is a lot. And he ends up supplying, unknown to him at the time, fake cash, as in movie prop cash.
Yeah.
And he takes it, and basically they end up in this weird sex party dungeon place
Yeah.
that they've been shown to by the one and only original Spider-Man, Tobey Maguire.
He's
He plays
so
such a
creepy.
creep. He kind of
Yeah.
he gave me the Gatsby vibe initially, and it's like, no, I'm like a creep in this, and then it just and he's so good at playing creepy guys. I'm not gonna lie. And he takes them to this weird aspect. He's like, I've got a load of ideas for films. It kind of implies like money laundering operation, maybe. And he's like, I'm gonna take you somewhere to see something you guys really want to see. And he kind of talks like this, right?
Yeah.
And then he takes them to, it's all like, it looks like an A24 bathroom bit where it's just like,
Don't give me
red
that,
neon.
John. Don't. No,
it's
we're not.
no.
Don't
but
you
it's-
dare.
I'm winding you up.
What do you
and it
mean by
looks great.
A24? Tell me what you mean by that.
Because I watched a YouTube video the other day. It was like how to get the A24 look, and literally it was a guy who put a red neon tube behind a shower curtain in his bathroom. I was like, yeah, it looks like a bathroom sequence. But anyway, but my point is,
no, sorry.
But
Go on.
it does look like that. And as he goes through, you see all these sites that end up being films, such as there's someone who looks like the guy from the film The Elephant Man.
Yeah.
Is down
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
There's what else was going on down there? There was loads of stuff going on, and
There's a lot of like sex and full
apart
frontal
from the
nudity.
sex stuff, but there was a lot of like things that you see in films later. And basically, during the sequence, like the money gets wet, and like Tobey Maguire sees it and loses it, and there's this escape where Manny has to get out with his producer friend or whatever, and there's like a crocodile trying to attack them, or an alligator. I never remember which one's which. I
can tell you which one's which, actually.
Go for it.
They're quite different. One is quite dark. I googled this the other day. One is quite green in color, and well, one of them's a lot bigger, and it's darker in color. There you go.
Okay, great.
Brilliant. I couldn't remember what I read.
And yeah, basically they escape, and that's when Margot Robbie's character only agrees at that point. Nelly only agrees at that point to leave with him. It's not really out of love, it's just because I feel like she just needs him. And that might be me being harsh. And then basically, as they go and do their escape and run away, she survives. Like, she doesn't get hitmen are sent to go and kill her and Manny, but she survives, but she dies at a later date. But Manny, as we said, he goes away for like 10 years and comes back, and he has a family, and he basically moves on from Hollywood. He has a life outside of, he finds new meaning.
It's nice. He has quite a nice ending, actually.
Yeah.
That he deserves, I think.
What I haven't really spoke about, and I think we should probably cover before we start going into some questions quickly, is kind of like how Nellie Leroy actually gets in the film industry. So basically someone gets so drunk at the initial party that she ends up covering for them. And as she ends up covering for them, she's supposed to do like one scene, and everyone loves it so much, she ends up doing sexy bar dancing, a bit like in Coyote Ugly, on a bar, and becomes a sensation, and she becomes the next thing, doesn't she?
The important thing about this is that the films are silent, so she is the one thing about Nellie is that she's common. Like, she's common. She's not how you'd expect a lady to talk. She's very much like yeah, I can cry on demand, like that kind of like thing. And she's like you can tell that I she basically goes, is it Samara Weaving that she pops up in this, which is really funny. So Samara Weaving is she's basically starts to take over her. She can cry on demand. She's doing all these like really sexy, risque things in the 20s, which then become slightly outdated.
because they don't have the rating system changed in that point. Like weirdly, when people could talk, they wanted people to speak in a certain way, and this is kind of exactly what Singing in the Rain's about, which we'll get into. And they wanted movie stars to have class essentially because they viewed them as having class, but they couldn't hear what they were saying. And as soon
Yeah.
as they could hear them, they wanted them to like hit that tone, let's say. And Jamie, I want you to talk about the most stressful sequence since Uncut Gems, which is Nellie Leroy's
Uncut
first
Gems.
talkie experience.
Oh, this is my favorite.
Stress.
This could be one of the funniest scenes in film that year, like easily. It's Nellie's first sound take, and so it's funny because we have like literally a parallel scene of this in Singing in the Rain. One of them is 18 rated and hilarious, and the other one is just hilarious. So yeah, Nellie's first sound take. It's the actual transition from silent to talkie, and so the film it's so stressful, and we kind of see Margot Robbie come on the scene, Nellie Leroy, and she's like, I can't remember what she says, but she's like, I'm finally here, or something
My
like that.
first day at high school.
That's it.
It's college. My first day at the new campus at college.
Yeah, yeah.
You didn't hit
and
the
it
mark
just
there.
Yeah, you've got a guy in the sound booth. The reason why there was a guy in a sound booth back then was because the equipment was so loud that it would just the microphones would pick up everything. So that's the problem. There was no I want to say they're all condenser mics, so they would pick up like all everything.
They're omnidirectional essentially, so you have to like well, they had to put the projectors and the cameras in like those soundproof environments so it wasn't picked up by the microphones.
Roasting in there, by the way. So it probably gets stopped a total of about 10 times because she walks in, she walks too hard, then she starts talking too much and she blows the sound, and then someone sneezes. But the way this is presented is in such a it very much is like this particular scene directed by the Safdie brothers. It's the most stressful thing ever, but it's also hilarious. You've got the guy, I don't know who he is, but he's the producer on set. And he's losing his mind. You've got, I want to say Jeff from Curb Your Enthusiasm that walks on a set, who I want to say is a Harvey Weinstein character. He walks on set and they're saying like, tell him to shut up and get off. And it finally stops with like Margot Robbie's losing her mind. She's like effing and jeffing, like I can't do this again, like screaming. And then we've got the producer finally. He's like, we are going again, camera and motherfucking sound. Like and you can see the spit flying out of his mouth because he's going crazy, and it's just so comical. Like I was just sitting howling. And then the guy in the sound booth, they're like, where's he? Oh, because they keep pushing him back in there. He's like, it's so hot in there. He's dead. He's died in the sound booth, and he's like, I don't know why I'm laughing, but it was funny.
It also presents a lot of things that we don't know about 1920s Hollywood. Like it's implied that when they film those large battle scenes, sometimes people did get really badly injured, and other times people were dying on set, and it's just kind of like, we'll
dying on set, people getting smashed by horses, like all sorts, and all
which
of this, by the way,
because there's probably no health and safety at this point.
No, there's no regulations, and all of this was done with physical. Like he actually had all those people on set, like Damien Chazelle. They built the set. He'd done everything physically because what he wanted was the outside sets. I wrote it down somewhere. Yeah, so he wanted Sergio Leone exteriors and Barry Lyndon interiors. That's what he said, which I find really interesting. And the whole film was storyboarded. Everything was storyboarded. Everything done physically. The costumes were handmade. You had like Diego Calva, the guy that plays Manny, wearing suspenders for his socks because they didn't have elastic in the 1920s. And although no one would ever see his socks or legs, he just wanted to feel like he was in the 1920s. It's really I think it's wonderful filmmaking. Like Damien Chazelle, for me, has slotted himself in quite firmly. He's one of my favorite working directors at the moment. Like I haven't seen First Man, but I've seen his other three big ones.
First Man's worth a watch.
I've got it on Blu-ray.
I
Got
think
it on
people's
4K.
issue with First Man was it was more the story about, and this is what going into For All Mankind again, but it follows the story of the journey of being with that person, but being so out of control, but having to be the one holding the fort. And I think there's a lot of stories now that are casting that different eye because women's stories are finally getting out there, which sounds really stupid for me to say, but do you know what I mean? Like to actually present the issues that they would have had, because before it was expected they'd act a certain way, and that's how it was portrayed in films. Was this was actually showcasing what they were really going through, and I think First Man did a lot of that. And I think at the time Claire Foy's brilliant in that film for me, but everyone said it was quite a muted performance from Ryan Gosling. But the other reason behind that is because Neil Armstrong himself was quite a stoic persona, and like all the astronauts weren't particularly friendly. They described themselves as kind of what did they say? Amicable strangers was the way they described it. They worked well together, but they weren't friends. It's a bit like, football teams. You're always like, in your head when you're a kid, all the footballers get on in the starting 11. And as you get older, you realise that most of them hate each other. Or do you know what I mean? It's just kind of it's a professional relationship, not a thingy. Anyway, all by the by. The other sequence I really want to talk about, and this is the last one I'll go into in detail before we talk about questions, is when Margot Robbie, I'll stop saying Margot Robbie, when Nellie Leroy attends the banquet / party, and
brilliant. Yeah.
She's been told to act a certain way and to say certain things, and it's a bit like in Singing in the Rain, where you've kind of got like, speak this way and do this, and you can see after like the opening 5 minutes she cannot cope. And she goes upstairs, talk to Manny, and he's like, your career is dead if you don't do this. Like, he's like, snap out of it. Like, give me your best performance you've ever done. By the end of it, she has peed on the floor. And she doesn't pee on the floor. She vomits over somebody on the floor. Because
she's not what she wants him to be. Like, she's authentic. Like, I think she really wants to be her
she's
authentic self.
And they criticize her, so she takes it to, like, she says, this is what you expect of me, that I'm an animal, so I'll act like an animal. And it's some of the best performances. Like, everyone, I remember at the time, like, lots of people were really pleased with Margot Robbie's performance in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And don't get me wrong, it's a good performance, but she has way more to do here. There's so much more meat on the bones of it, of what you get to do.
I agree, 100%. Like, she's been given like a really people really complained about the part she had in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood because it was not enough for an actor like Margot Robbie. I think this the amount she's given to the script. She said it's one of the best scripts she's ever read. She says this is her favorite piece of work that she's ever done, and she feels like it's going to live for the ages. Like it's gonna live long for decades.
Well, someone talked.
I agree.
Is this masterpiece as a classic? And then someone said the criteria is can you go into this in any year and it still be relevant? And now, because it's a time period piece, this will age well because of the way it's been shot and done practically. Because I don't think there probably is. There's always CG in films. There's always hidden CG to remove.
There's not much at all. No, there's not much at all.
There's nothing. And do you know what? Slightly off topic, but I'm going to say it anyway. Someone's talking about how the Dark Knight trilogy's like aged really well recently, but then there's Marvel films from like 4 or 5 years ago which are aging terribly because of the crunch and the production, but because of the reliance on the digital effects that have been rushed through, not good ones.
Yeah.
It ages quicker. Whilst there's a film like Alien, which is mainly practical. There's 2 shots in Alien which look old, and the rest of it is perfect. It's just that kind of thing, and it's interesting how a film like Babylon, because of the production design, the way it's been shot, and because of the year it's been dealt with, will stay relevant. I think the message is about, well, we've covered it, about living forever within the film, and this is going to be one of the films that's living forever within the film. So it's got a meta element to it. Anyway, we should probably cover some questions about this film before we delve into Singing in the Rain. It's really hard not to talk about Singing in the Rain while talking about this film because they're very similar beats.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so we don't we've got questions not particularly about Babylon. They're mostly like generic to the pod, but let's break this up a little bit. And let's talk about so Kim's.cinema. Whoa, got a name wrong. Kim's.horror.escape writes in with a really interesting question, actually. And she says, will we ever have as big an evolution in movies now/soon as the change from silent to talkie? So I guess this had me thinking. I was like, so are we going to have another big thing from like that we had silent to talkie? So we had black and white to color. Then we had, I want to say 3D.
Well, before that, they did the different things like the screens that went around, the super arm or whatever it's called, when you had like a screen like going round, and then you kind of have IMAX. My honest opinion is no, and I tell you why as well, because people, funnily enough, don't like change. So, and I mean, remember when 3D started to pop off and people just moaned about the prices of 3D conversion and there weren't enough authentically shot 3D films? Now, I remember when I saw Prometheus for the first time, which was shot genuinely in 3D, and being completely wowed by it. And not as the first one for that was Avatar. That felt like game changing.
Avatar was like, I talk about that all the time,
but it felt like that was whatever you thought of the
4DX
film.
now you've got.
It doesn't. I don't.
Which I think that 4DX is a bit of a gimmick, to be honest. Like, I went to see Justice League.
Theme park, but I don't want it. I
went to see Justice League in 4DX, and it's really quite distracting because you've got these like massive. So like you've got these massive fans on the side.
I hate.
And so like when you're outside, and like Batman's on the roof, and it's like. Like you can barely hear the dialogue because like there's this massive fan going, and your seat's like moving all like this, and it's like, and you're just like, well, I can't really concentrate on the film if I'm being quite honest.
Also, and I've had this chat with you before because we went to see the film. It was the Idris Elba film where a lion attacks his family. I can't even remember what it's called. And we saw that in 4DX.
Beast,
and like,
Beast.
It's going, bah, 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 bah. And don't get me wrong, it was a fun novelty trick. But after an hour and a half, it's like bloody hell, the seat's about to vibrate again because the lion's. Oh God, like maybe I sound like a cantankerous old man. Maybe I am, but.
Oh, you have me, because you said like, oh, Babylon's vulgar, like an old man.
No, but it is. But what I would say is when I watched, and I've said this a million times, when I watched A New Hope for the first time, you see the Death Star trench run, I have a feeling and a sense of momentum from what I'm seeing on the screen. Yeah. I personally feel like I don't need a chair to move around for me to feel that. And if it needs to do that, it tells me it's not doing enough in the filmmaking. You think about the sweeping camera movements of something like in Babylon. And like the way, way it makes you feel like you're moving through space, as in space in the set. So that's that. But what I was going to say was, I personally don't think we're going to get it because they tried to introduce 3D and people were like, no, basically. Right. They got to the point where like, we're not interested. They've gone for.
I don't know if that's true though, because 3D's still a thing.
Yeah, but it's
Avatar: Way of Water was in 3D.
It's not what they thought it was going to be.
No, they thought the 3D tellies have gone. Yeah, like you 3D tellies have gone.
Buy it as a novelty. Like the projectors are 3D. I've never used it.
It's funny because they tried to do a few things. Like they tried to like release those TVs that were like curved, and it's like they just went out of fashion so quickly. And what I would say is that nowadays, there's a couple of points I had about this, and I think we're right. Like we're not going to get anything unless I've got a stupid idea. Well, it's not a stupid idea because it's probably within the realms of like possibility. I think most of the time now it's the experience people market. So the reclining chairs, the social media aspect for like Barbenheimer, for example. So I think in terms of what transcends film now would be the experience of dressing up as Barbie, like, and going to the films. Like, I think this it's more not around the
secret film club, whatever it's called in London, that does that stuff. Like when you can go see Back to the Future, and it's like half immersive, half watch the film. I forgot the name. So
they do it here as well. So you can go to like Alice in Wonderland, and when they're eating the food, they bring food around, that kind of thing. At the same time, I do think there's going to be the. I'll finish on one thing. But we had the only other thing I could even remember would be Bandersnatch that was on Netflix. So the what's the Black Mirror Bandersnatch? But what that was it was a film like feature length episode of Black Mirror. And what that did was that you would actually interact with the film and be like, oh, what's the character going to do now? Do you want to punch her in the face or rob the bank? So you choose one or the other, and then you actually have like lots of different paths you go down, like the butterfly effect almost. Yeah. So that was an idea.
Choose your own adventure.
Yeah, exactly that. Sorry. Yeah, exactly. I don't know why I didn't say that. Sorry. Choose your own adventure. So the only other thing that I think would be that doesn't exist at the moment but is almost existing, would be the VR stuff. So that you could put a VR headset on and go and walk around the ruins in Rome, like
Mhm.
the Colosseum. I think that is probably the only thing I could think of. That, and there is things where you can go to a museum with a VR headset or
Yeah, yeah.
sit front row. Imagine this, John. You love boxing. Imagine you could sit at the front row of a boxing match.
Well, I
60
think
quid.
it already exists for football, doesn't it? When they did the
Yeah.
BT thing where you could move your phone around to see it from those angles.
So I think that's the next one, VR.
Yeah, the only other one I thought of, which has tried to be introduced, which people said no to, was the Peter Jackson thing. He went 48 frames per second's really good,
Oh god, yeah.
and everyone went
Shite.
soap opera effect. I don't like it. And then
Shite.
I tell you what, it is better for the 3D. It did look better for the 3D
Right, okay.
because
Yeah.
there were more frames, so the motion was less weird. Now,
Yeah.
Peter Jackson, James Cameron had some sequences in The Way of Water in 120 frames.
Yeah.
And he had other sequences at 24, and the more action sequences skipped that, so you got better 3D. But yeah, that's my final point on that, really.
Yeah, I mean, and thanks for the great question because it has given us a lot of discussion. Right then, we better get into it because these old podcasts are getting ridiculous.
Yeah, we need to get tighter. So our next film is going to be, we've mentioned it a few times today, Singing in the Rain.
The public is screaming for more.
Make a musical.
Sure, make a musical.
Good morning. Good morning.
The primary colours, John. The primary colours. It's
Technicolor.
gorgeous. Technicolor. Mark that. Speaking of colours, Film Forager writes in and she says, "Can you name some of your favourite Technicolor films?" Have you had a chance to look, John?
I've
Or have you complete? Oh, go on.
No, I've got two to go at. Well, I've
I
got
know what
three
ones you-
actually.
Do you know what? I can guess.
Go on, number one.
Oh, Hitchcock. Vertigo.
Yeah, one.
Yeah.
Two.
Cool. Number 2. Oh, Dial M for Murder.
No, Rope. Yeah.
Rope. Okay, cool. North by Northwest was also Technicolor.
Okay, I should have put that on there. That's not my third. The third one is the obvious one, which everyone's going to say, but go for it.
Wizard of Oz.
Of course, because let's be honest, it's just like pure magic.
The Wizard of Oz is one of the most magical film experiences I've ever had in my entire life because I didn't realise the film wasn't black and white.
And for you, top three? Or some?
Yeah, I mean, John, I've took the piss out of you, right? But
What did you put? Vertigo?
Dial M for Murder, which was one of my favourite Hitchcocks, actually.
We had fun
North by
watching
Northwest.
that. We need to do another
Yeah,
old
brilliant,
Hitchcock.
yeah. I remember that. I remember it well. The Red Shoes by Powell and Pressburger, which is a absolute banger. Everyone knows that film.
Yeah.
Iconic. Probably one of, except apart from Wizard of Oz, probably the most iconic Technicolor movie. And the Wizard of Oz, yeah, as I say, I watched it as a kid, and I didn't realize the film was color. That's the magic of it. Imagine, that's why I don't watch trailers, because imagine my surprise going in and being like, wow, wow, wee, wah. This is a color film. So they're probably my favorites. So it's important. It's important to know, isn't it, that Babylon began in Bel Air in 1926. Singing in the Rain begins in 1927. And we kind of see. So Singing in the Rain is obviously a musical. Let's just quickly talk about the synopsis. So 1927 Hollywood. We've got Monumental Pictures' biggest stars, Lena Lamont and Don Lockwood. They're also, well, they say they're an off-screen couple, if we believe the papers and stuff, but they're not really. They kind of pretend to be together just for public perception, and yeah, it brings people into the movie theaters. They're in the silent era. Don, actually played by Gene Kelly, actually hates. He can't stand Lena, who is played by Jean Hagen. He can't stand her. She's just not very nice. And she kind of thinks that he's going to fall in love with her at some point. And yeah, it's the kind of we kind of see the film introduce talking pictures. We see a film called The Jazz Singer that comes out in 1927, which changes cinema forever. And so from there on out, we kind of see these actors try and transition into the talking picture. Kind of along the way, Debbie Reynolds, she was only 18 actually, in the film. Jean, why? Where's the second name gone? Where's the second name gone?
Kathy Selden.
No, what's Gene Kelly? Bloody hell! Gene Kelly had a brain meltdown. Gene Kelly's 37 in real life. She was only 18 in the film. They kind of cross paths, and he falls in love with her.
Yeah,
And
the start of the film again it was really interesting after watching Babylon, because I watched this second. I don't know if you did it the same way around. It's just like
I did. I'd seen Singing in the Rain a few times though before.
Yes, same. And like, here's the PC version of what happened, and a celebration of the move into was Babylon. Babylon has it as a subject theme, but it's not the main reason. It's Babylon looks at it from the perspective of it's something that happened that threw a lot of people out, and like Hollywood will continually do that. This is more of like a success story of someone through it. So you've got, Kathy Selden's a theatre actor, and she looks down on Gene Kelly's character because of the fact like acting for pictures isn't the same, because you just pull silly faces and then a card comes up and then you don't really act properly, and then he starts to believe her when it actually kicks in for the talking pictures, because the styles needed are very different. And again, this is the journey that Brad Pitt's character goes through in the previous film. And when Kathy starts to she makes her way through similar, she's dancing at a party, not too dissimilar to how other people got their start up in the previous film,
but a PG version.
A PG version, very, very PG version. And then essentially it turns out she's got an amazing voice, and she can dance, she can do all the things that's needed for these talking pictures in terms of having that star quality. And unfortunately for Lena Lamont, it's kind of said that, like, she may look the part of a Hollywood goddess, but like her voice isn't what we want. And again, that's kind of ties into Margot Robbie's character in the previous film, because it's a similar experience of how that goes down, really. But this is more in a much more light comedy, light entertainment.
It's very light-hearted.
1 hour 40 minutes as well, rather than
beautiful
3 hours.
Yeah, you could fit 2 Singing in the Rains into one Babylon.
Yeah.
I would say that, like, this is, for me, I think Singing in the Rain is the musical. Like, I'm not. Don't get me wrong. I'm not an expert on musicals by any means, but in terms of how, for me, like, this is one of my favorite films. I think it's so lighthearted, and it's a film that you can watch anytime. Like, it doesn't really have an underlying story. There's no. And a really interesting part about that is that it should have been a disaster, because they wrote the music for the film first. So the music was written first, and then wrote the plot of the music around the film, so made it fit. And so,
well, if you think about it, the Singing in the Rain number kind of doesn't really pay any relevance to anything apart from the fact, I suppose, he's happy that he's fallen in love. He's
got a smile on his face.
It's the only link to it, but it's not particularly relevant to the plot point that's happening. And I don't think that's uncommon for that time, though, is it? I feel like numbers were written and then like forced into things. It's a bit like nowadays, when there's scripts that clearly have not been sold off, but then if an IP, they slap an IP on it and reuse the script because they know it'll do well. I feel like that's the same with like songs in that era, but I may be wrong.
I think the one thing that it's definitely with this, I would say that the songs, pretty much every single one of them, are extremely memorable. And I Make 'em Laugh is, so the scene with Donald O'Connor where he is make 'em laugh.
I
and
find it stressful, that sequence.
Well,
like
get
the
this
amount
right. So
of energy going into that sequence.
He's pulling all these funny faces, and it's all about like kind of not taking life too seriously, that kind of thing. So he was Donald O'Connor, extremely talented tap dancer, as was Gene Kelly. But Donald O'Connor, he was smoking around 4 packs of cigarettes a day, and he ended up in hospital from that. So that scene where he's doing this, the choreography is just absolutely incredible. And he's playing around with the choreography, and they throw this doll over. They're like, here, just do something with this doll, and he starts like
Ragging it
playing around with
around.
this doll behind a sofa, and the famous scene of him running up a wall and backflipping off a wall. He does it twice, and then the third time he goes through a wall. That took him so many attempts because he just it just took its toll on his body.
By the time you got to that bit anyway.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of the physical exertion in this film is just crazy. So we obviously have Debbie Reynolds at 18 in the film. She hadn't danced before, and then she was going. It was actually the head of the studio. What we spoke about being under contract earlier, she was under contract, and she was just basically told, like, look, we've got this part for you, so go and do it. And she can't say no. So Debbie Reynolds, as a young woman, went to work with Gene Kelly, who was also the director of the film. Now, really interesting because it was directed by Gene Kelly and Stanley Donen. Gene Kelly people called him a triple threat because he could sing, he could dance, he could also act, but then so he was doing all the things like in front of the camera. He was doing the choreography. He was directing the actors. And Stanley Donen, they worked together. They were like best friends. They said that it was one of the best partnerships ever. Like them two were amazing together, and they worked so well together. There was never any tension, that kind of thing. Well, there was tension from Gene Kelly because he's intense, like massively intense on set. But we've got Stanley Donen. He did all the behind the camera stuff. So he would kind of look after all the cinematography, all of the lighting, that kind of thing. But Gene Kelly could do it all, which was really interesting. And Gene Kelly kind of was in charge of, obviously we say he was in charge of the choreography, and he was a perfectionist. As you can see in the choreography, like the footwork, and he was 37 and he's dancing around like a 20-year-old. Like, it's genuinely crazy. Like, for a fact, if you took his shirt off, that is like a washboard, mate. Like that is a 8-pack.
Just to say on that point about the dancing and the footwork, I found it really interesting, having just watched but when you watch La La Land, and they do the sequence by the moonlight, the dance of Emma Stone and Ryan Gosling, I remember at the time being like, oh, this is like really good, really intricate. Yeah, it's a way more subdued style, and I wonder if that's a creative choice, or is it just because I know Ryan Gosling was a Disney kid and he did some element of dance, but it's nothing like those old school entertainers that you see in Singing in the Rain. It's just the energy and vigor they have for performance is just like nothing.
You don't see anyone doing that anymore.
The only way I see it now in film, and don't laugh, but in with the same amount of energy in a completely different style, is like hip hop dancing in like the 90s films, like say The Last Dance or whatever. That's where that energy's going.
Yeah, okay. I agree with that.
Do you know what I mean?
What about get your head in the game? Gotta get your
quite
head.
so much. I'm thinking more Save the Last Dance. Thinking,
No. I know what you're saying. What's the other one? What's the one with Channing Tatum?
I'm trying to remember it. You step up, I'll step up to Step Up.
Is it Step Up?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Look at us, man.
Anyway, but my point is, but do you know what? That for me. So you're talking of like how things move on. I don't feel like musicals do as well now. We're going to talk about an example of that in a second. But it's interesting how those dance films kind of filled that market of, it's still got singing in it, but it's a song, not a thing. And it's still expressing emotions through dance as an art form, but it's always built into a performance. So it's like taking elements of it and doing it a different way. The reason I just wanted to quickly mention something funny about musicals is there's a clip going around social media of the new Mean Girls film. It's not been promoted with anything of the fact that it's a musical. And then, like, in the film, a scene happens, and then it leads into a musical number, and someone was filming it, and then the whole audience go, oh, because they're just so furious. And I think it's just like, I don't think musicals are like a commonly popular thing anymore. Example, in Wonka, it's like in the trailers, there's no note of any of the like musical numbers. It's completely hidden away. And like, for me, Wonka is, there's large parts where it isn't musical, but all the best bits are when it is a musical. Like, that's what you're there for. It's a childlike experience.
I like a musical.
It's just interesting how it's like studios are ashamed of them at the moment. It's just kind of like we need to sneak this through the back door. We can't really say it's a musical.
I can't sorry, off topic. I can't believe they've rebooted Mean Girls. I think it's, do you know Mean Girls is 25 years, 20,
We're on a chat about like Babylon,
20
and
years
Singing in the
old.
Rain, and here we
You know,
are.
Mean Girls is 20 years old. I can't believe they've remade it. Like, why? You may as well go remake The Godfather. The film's perfect. The original, just leave it.
I think what they've gone for is Tina Fey. It was originally a book, wasn't it? And then she directed or wrote the original film. So again, she's done a
Dunno.
reimagining of it and changed it for the social media age. I'm not against the concept of it. I just don't like when studios
Apparently
lie.
it's all right.
I don't like studios lying in marketing. I find like it's
Yeah.
market it for what it is. It you know, it is what
Yeah.
it is, and that's fine. And people will see that if you can't trick people into seeing things, and if you do, they're going to give you an unhappy review anyway, and then word of mouth is
Yeah.
poor.
Yeah, exactly.
So anyway, back to Singing in the Rain. Can I just say something that I found when I was watching this and for Gene Kelly? So you know when he's actually doing the number Singing in the Rain, his trousers get so wet and his socks would be drenched. There is nothing worse than when you're walking and you know if
Yeah.
like your socks get wet and your feet get wet. His foot is soaked from minute one of that routine.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not just a little bit of rain. So to get rain to appear on camera, remember the Wachowski saying that they had to have like milk to make it appear on screen, the rain.
Oh, no.
Because, now, I don't know if that was the case, but they had to like introduce
Right.
an element of it. It was when they did Matrix Revolutions. I'm not sure if
Yeah.
it's the same for Singing in the Rain, but I was like, imagine if it is the same. It's just like a smell of like rank milk mixed in with like this water, but also the
no.
amount of volume they put on camera, so you can definitely
It's
see it.
far too
It's
much.
There's
There's no need for that.
It's like
Do you want me to tell you
someone's
something
got a
worse?
bucket going. Yeah, go on.
Oh, so in that actual scene, the day of filming that scene, Gene Kelly was really ill and had like a really
classic.
bad fever. Yeah,
Yeah.
so along
Ideal.
with being absolutely soaked, but you would never be able to tell. And he is. I think he is unbelievable. Like, what an unbelievable talent. As is Donald O'Connor. And sorry, I don't mean to be rude to Debbie Reynolds. So fair play to her. Like they had massive tension on set. Gene Kelly and Debbie Reynolds, they really tough time because she'd never danced before. He was a perfectionist, and so he at one point in time, Fred Astaire was on set, and I don't know why. Obviously, I'd imagine it's something to do with choreography because he was also a big kind of musical performer. In an adjacent like dance studio, Fred Astaire found her crying under a piano because
The intensity.
the intensity of it all, and during the good morning, that song, which I just think when it comes on, I'm like banger, and then something else comes on, I'm like banger.
Yeah.
You know the one where they're doing the dialect thing, the tongue twisters, like that's brilliant as well. But anyway, when they're doing the good morning thing, all three of them, so that was apparently a 15-hour day. The 15-hour day was them just getting it over and over and over again. By the end of it, Debbie Reynolds said that she had blood in her shoes from that whole performance. But she also said that making the movie and surviving childbirth were the two hardest things she's ever had to do, and the filming experience was particularly unpleasant due to the harsh treatment from Gene Kelly. I think so. Then decades later, Kelly said that he had remorse about his behavior. He says like, I wasn't nice to Debbie, and it's a wonder she still speaks to me.
Well, there you go.
So, yeah.
With the film as successful as it was, there's probably a bit of him which felt justified. And
Well, it was only so it was medium successful. Like, so when it first came out, it took about 5 years for this to be successful.
That's interesting.
Babylon was a flop as well. So Babylon we didn't actually touch upon, but Babylon was made for 110 million, and it didn't make it. It made about half of it back. This was it came out to like a warm, tepid critical reception, and then it took about 5 years for it to kind of
classic. It is,
yeah. And now you'd probably say it's the best musical. I would just like talk about a couple of little bits then, couple of like really funny bits. So obviously we never go into the second film as much, but I love the sequence of, so we've got is it Lenny? I keep, do you know what? I keep getting mixed up with Lena Lamont and Nellie Leroy, which is understandable, I think.
Well, they're essentially the same character.
Exactly.
And
Yeah,
they're
they are.
influencing each other. Yeah.
Exactly. You've got Lena Lamont, who is Gene Kelly's on-screen love interest, and we kind of see the silent film is moving to the talkie because of the jazz singer. I think it is that. That film's like just doing crazy numbers, and then we see that actors try and transition into basically the talkies, and it's really funny because the stuff that they're doing in the silent cinema is really working, and then we hear her voice for the first time, and it's very much like, well, I can't remember. There's a few lines where she's really just got a gross voice, hasn't she?
But it's more so when Gene Kelly's like, can't I just ignore the script and do what I normally do? And he goes up and he goes, I love you, I love you, I love you. And it's like
Yeah.
silent films, it works. But for he's like, oh, the audience are like, oh, who wrote that dialogue? You know, just slagging off.
Yeah.
It just sounds trash. And yeah, it's just, that is a funny sequence. That is,
I think there's loads
anything
of
with
funny.
a dialect coach is always good. And to be honest, a lot of the best sequences are with Lena, like, having issues.
She's
so
superb.
well
Like
done.
she's really, really funny, and her voice is very much like really squeaky, so it's not going to translate well to the talkies. And that brings me on to a question from David Ellis, who writes in and says, apart from Morgan Freeman, an obvious choice, which actors and actresses do you consider to have the best voices and why?
Kiefer Sutherland, 24,
got a good voice, yeah.
and Phone Booth. But just in terms of whenever
Yeah.
you hear his voice, I think he'd be great for just doing documentaries and stuff as well. He's just got a very distinctive tone and pitch, and
Yeah,
he's great.
Speaking of great voices,
Go
the
for it.
best voice of all time would be David Attenborough.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose not
Here we
movie
are.
star, but yeah.
Well, yeah, he's not a movie star, but his brother is. So do you know what? Give me that, John. How
Yeah.
about you give me that? And then there's a few. There's a Scarlett Johansson in the film Her. She's got that. She's got quite like a distinct, like raspy voice that I love, amongst other things. And Patrick Stewart.
Patrick
Stewart's
Stewart's a
got-
good one. I love his, the Yorkshire Tea advert. He's like, Jew. Have you seen it when she's like, there's a woman retiring, and he's like, and he starts doing a speech, and it's a bit like one of his Star Trek ones where it's really melodramatic. It's very well
No,
done.
but no,
Anyway,
no.
he's got that. It's the Shakespearean undertone. Ian McKellen's
Yeah.
kind of the other one I was thinking
Yeah.
of. That kind of like.
How about who's oh God, what's her name? Is it Gwyneth Paltrow? No, it's not Gwyneth Paltrow. It's the other lady. Oh no, she's in Talented Mr. Ripley, where she's like at the start of Lord of the Rings.
Kate
Five
Blanchett.
men. Kate
Yeah,
Blanchett. There
yeah.
we go. Kate Blanchett, brilliant voice.
The other one I was going to say actually, and this is sounds a bit weird, but like in Chronicles of Riddick, I'm sure Judi Dench does the opening voiceover. It's quite a
Iconic voice
distinctive
as well.
one. And then the
Yeah,
other
she's got
one,
really good-
people can slag it off because we talked about it last week. Anthony Hopkins in Rebel Moon, but like genuinely, he does have a very.
Why is he the voice of a robot?
Why is he called Jimmy? Anyway,
Why is he called Jimmy?
I love how trigger people were over that bit. Anyway, Anthony Hopkins has a very distinctive voice, and he's done many a voiceover.
Mm.
Good,
Yeah, yeah,
good
yeah.
and bad.
Most
And
annoying
He
voice?
sells it. Most
I would
annoying
say-
voice.
Probably John.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm joking.
I
John's got a lovely voice.
disagree.
No.
I do try really hard to make my intonations more interesting these days, but it comes and goes. I'm sorry.
I think you've got a good podcast voice. It's nice and deep. It's nice and deep and clear. The most annoying voice I would say is probably Adam Sandler and Little Nicky. Those do my head in quite a bit.
I was going to say either Jesse Eisenberg in.
Oh, God.
Did you see the reel I sent you earlier, by the way, which is the guy doing the impersonation of Jesse Eisenberg and Michael
Yeah,
Cera
I
sitting
did, yeah.
together trying to decide what to watch on Netflix?
I
I
actually hate. Yeah, I actually hate Jesse Eisenberg's.
So, again, like
kind of.
I think his performance in Social Network is fantastic. I think it's one of my favourite things, and it's very. I know to get where he got to, it was a very Finch performance where he got drilled into it. But I feel like he's stuck with that shtick for a long time. But I quite liked him as Lex Luthor. I thought he was completely unhinged, and I was here for it. Anyway, someone will tell me I've talked about Snyder, so I'll stop. Next question, sorry?
Anyway, yeah. So I think we we've talked quite a bit about Singing in the Rain, and the other just a little bit I would just like to mention is just the part where they're transitioning into the talkie, and we've got
The microphone.
God,
sequence.
Lena. Why can't you remember her name? It's because
Lena
it's so
Lamont.
similar. Lena Lamont.
You're explaining the microphone. He's like, "This is the microphone. It's
Yeah.
here in this plant. If you turn
Really
away,
funny,
it
man.
can't hear you." And he's like,
Yeah.
"It goes through the cable and goes to
Yeah.
and it's just like watch. And again, do you know what the Margot Robbie scene is? Obviously, the riff on that about like
Yeah, of
missing
course,
the
yeah.
marker, missing the being too loud for the audio, being this, being that, and it's really really funny. And Lena Lamont's constant line, isn't it? Is people think I'm dumb or something. Like that's like
it,
her
yeah.
kind of rapport, like the thing she does over and over. But yeah, it's a good sequence, and again, it's nice seeing it in a PG.
I think it's been expertly handled by, but I wouldn't say it's complete. I think the sequences, although obviously might be inspired by, they obviously are inspired by each other. Well, Babylon's inspired by Singing in the Rain. I think that it's different enough, and I think that Damien Chazelle
we covered
has
this extensively last week with inspiration. We are not going on a retread.
massively inspired.
Yeah.
But anyway, the colours used, I think the choreography
it's so vibrant.
It's beautiful, isn't it? Like it's lots of primary colours, isn't it? But then we've got this dreamlike sequence, about a 13-minute sequence towards the end, where he's like imagining, and then it flicks back.
Because she talks about the producer says, "What's the end of the picture going to be like?" And he talks about, so when he said it's going to be about someone going from Broadway to Hollywood, I thought it was going to be about Kathy's journey.
Right.
Because, Kathy said she started off in the theatre. I thought he was like doing it to romantically be like, "Oh, here's your amazing journey." It's just about him just dicking about for like 13 minutes dancing around.
Yeah.
And with like 3 or 4 different women. One's a cigarette smoking one, one's a ballet dancer in the sky, and then there's another one. And it just feels to me, to be fair, like if I'm giving like constructive criticism to like one of the most acclaimed films of all time, it does feel a bit random. Like that sequence to me, in line with everything else.
This was dreamlike, isn't it? It's a dreamlike sequence.
And it's like it's a very self-indulgent sequence. However,
I think so. Yeah,
very much like La La Land. That
Yeah.
last 10 minutes is that, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Oh no, 100%. Yeah,
In a good way.
The scene with the ballet dancer, by the way. So that scene with the ballet dancer, she's amazing dancer. There is a weird jump cut in that ballet dancing scene where he kind of has her in this pose, and it cuts very jarringly to a different pose. It's a really good fact, actually, in my opinion.
Go on.
The reason that was a jump cut was actually in the original negative. The original negative of this film was lost, and it was lost in a big fire, like like a building block burnt down, and it burnt loads of films. Actually, it's quite famous. Don't know what it is off the top of my head, but so the original negative is lost, so we don't actually have any footage of that particular scene anymore. But the film that was shown in the theaters was this exact one that we watched, and there's this weird jump cut because apparently the dance move that Gene Kelly performed with this woman was just a bit too risque at the time.
Let's get
a bit too sexy. So what were you doing, Gene? Elaborate.
With the kind of like films go missing like that, it's crazy because I remember I've said to you a million times, but the cut of Spartacus we watch now is a fan's memory who had seen it multiple times because they lost all the like reels or they were completely like beyond repair. So they had someone go through and find the original takes and all this stuff, and it just seems insane. And like one of the best things about digital is the preservation is just so much better. Like essentially, when Jamie's watched countless videos on how they do this, but when they scan in for those remasters, they get the 4K scan, and they can preserve that for years to come, and it's great.
Yeah,
but
So I think are we done on Singing in the Rain?
I think we are. I
Greatest musical of all time.
Yeah,
Someone would probably argue that Grease is, but
no. The one for me, I was going to say potentially was West Side Story, and I'll tell you why. In my head, and this is the Robert Wise version, is I don't know if for me West Side Story, the numbers are a bit. It sounds stupid because it's still grown men dancing around and clicking their fingers in 50s but it feels grittier. The story's more. It's Romeo and Juliet, right? It's got a bit more weight to it.
Well, A Tale of Two Cities, isn't it? Like
that kind of. It's more plot driven. While Singing in the Rain is essentially a really nice hour and 40 minutes of people dancing around with a really minimal plot. Whilst West Side Story's got fantastic musical numbers embedded within a very similar story we've seen before. But that's.
I would say with Singing in the Rain that you could for me when I watch it, it just makes me happy, and I could watch it like countless times. It makes me happy. It kind of like in a way like is really just what cinema like. You don't always need like this underlying like crazy dark plot or something like that. Like
No,
something like this.
yeah.
This is like really. I think it's just for me. It's the side of cinema that just I love so much. Like there's no cynicism there. It's really funny. Yeah, it's brilliant. The only other musical I say that might rival it is High School Musical.
I knew you were going to say that. I mean, it's High School Musical is the Singing in the Rain of our generation.
Oh, I mean, yeah.
Why
And
not?
on that note, writes in and says, "How does a musical allow the filmmakers to tell the story differently to a regular movie?"
So I think it depends on which musical. So let's use some modern examples. In La La Land, I think it's used in quite a restrained manner, which sounds crazy, but like it's not always the characters singing about how they're feeling. There are numbers where that happens, but there's some general numbers. There's points in between where it's actually filmed almost like a documentary kind of style, where
Yeah.
it feels more realistic, which sounds a weird thing to say, but it's less au fait around it. Does that make sense? It's less kind of, and Wonka's the same. It's kind of like, I want to say more in the real world, but it's definitely not in the real world. But this kind of like, it's trying to present a more natural outlook, and then there just happens to be music within it. While Singing in the Rain is a world where musicals are an integral part, and like at any point we could break into song. That for me is the difference. High School Musical has that vibe. Like jokes aside, like at any point they will break into song because they're in a world
Yeah.
where that's what they do.
Yeah.
Do you know what though? There's been some great musical episodes of TV shows, so like Buffy the Vampire Slayer had the musical episode. Star Trek Strange New World season 2 has one, and I initially was so like, what have they done to my Star Trek? Like it's so good. I'm obsessed.
Okay.
Like it's so good, and there's a genuine like they've got enough of a plot reason for it to feel okay. But again, in those shorter TV episodes, they used it to express feeling and emotion, which is obviously what music does. But what I'm trying to get across in La La Land is in between, it feels more like a serious drama, which happens to have musical numbers in it. Whereas in the 40s, it was like at any point you could get into a dance, or that for me is the difference. It feels like and we talked about in La La Land the dancing and that happens. It is there, but it feels a more restrained style from and I don't know if that's ability or a creative choice or what.
Yeah, I would say it's probably a bit of both. I mean, for me, I would say that sometimes it allows the actual character for you to really see what they're feeling like. So in terms of that, so Tick Tick Boom is a really good example of.
That's what I should have said.
Yeah, I got you there, John.
Yeah.
So Tick Tick Boom, like the way we talk about, we've spoken about it probably about 4 or 5 times. We covered it on a previous episode, so go back and listen to that. But the Andrew Garfield, the song when he's sitting on the piano outside, and actually it was about his mum. Well, it was to his mum who died, or about her. I think in what a musical sometimes allows us to do is one, not be so serious all the time. Or be serious, like, so it allows us to like have just a completely light-hearted approach about some dark things, but also as well it allows a character to sing about how they're feeling without kind of narrating it. Do you know what I mean? Like
it's kind of a cheeky way
sing
in,
don't don't tell.
Well, a bit. Well, it's kind of like getting rid of the voiceover aspect or internal monologue. The Tick Tick Boom one I thought was really good, and I remember that film's got music from what he's writing a musical in it, so it's included within, which is kind of like in Singing in the Rain. They're going to make a musical,
film about a film.
It kind of goes with that thing. So, yeah.
And I mean, we've just got one last question, which it might be a quick one actually. Well, it will be from my point of view, unfortunately.
Go for it.
And that is Watch with Beck. She writes in and says, friend of the show, by the way, hello. And she says, have you seen The Artist from 2011? And if you have, how do you think it measures up to Singing in the Rain and Babylon? I personally love The Artist. Well. Hold
the
on.
Collection.
Yeah, it is. It is in the collection. And do you know what happened? Let me tell you something about The Artist, right? Oof. 7 BAFTAs, winner 7 BAFTAs, best film. Sorry, I'm all over the place. I'm doing what Lenny Leroy does in the microphone scene. winner of 5 Oscars, including Best Picture. Let me tell you something about this film. Now, it's black and white, and I was like, this is going to be great. And then I didn't realize I probably watched about, this is a really horror, I'm so sorry. I probably put it on for about half an hour, and I was like, nah. I didn't realize it was a silent film. So The Artist is a silent film. I didn't realize. Had I known it was a silent film going into it, I would have been okay with it, but I just wasn't in the mood for it, and I haven't revisited it since.
Well,
I have since watched.
I've
Go
not
on.
seen it, so maybe we could watch it together.
Maybe we could. Maybe we could watch it together. It's a little PG. Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure then. If it's PG.
So there we go. Yeah, so I do feel a bit bad about that. So Beck, it's only 100 minutes. Well, I say 100 minutes. That's quite long for a silent film. I have recently watched Safety Last, which is superb. Anyway.
I remember early on when we did this pod, and Jamie was really proud and was like, we're going to do M. And I was there slagging it off, being like, oh, you can tell they didn't have enough budget because they only used sound for half the scenes. And then Jamie was like really offended, and then it's actually true. That is why they only had half the talking scenes. Anyway,
that was Fritz.
Sorry, that's so early on.
Yeah, M from the 1930s is Fritz Lang's first ever talkie. So there you go. How about them apples, John?
I think
John,
it was linked to 7.
It was linked to 7. Yeah, it was our
episode
second
2, maybe.
Episode 2 it was, yeah. John, have you got anything to... Oh, right, cool. So, quick one then. This Sunday we're going to see... We've got a press screening of Zone of Interest,
yes,
which I'm very, very excited about. So that is... We'll be covering that on the next pod. So yeah, Zone of Interest. Might even put our quick thoughts up on YouTube to give a little short. So yeah, Zone of Interest. It's about the commandment of Auschwitz. It's about I imagine it's gonna be pretty grim. So we've also got a screening of American Fiction coming up. We can tell you more about that when we're fully confirmed. But we should be working with someone else for a little bit. Not for a little bit. Like we're still going to be producing episodes. So as normal, you're going to get your same old stuff. We will not be paid off. No one will. No, we will not be. We will say whatever we want forever. We will not be paid. We will not be silenced. John.
Riverside.
Yeah. Where can they find you?
At jcv.video.
Oh, and I tell you what as well. He's doing some good stuff at the moment, like really good stuff. He's got some stuff on his Instagram, and hopefully we'll be uploading to YouTube as well about behind the scenes. John's a videographer, so what he does in shoots, how he shoots things. So you learn quite a lot about like gimbal shots, ninja walks.
Cinematography breakdown of a gym shoot essentially was the last one, which has weirdly interested people more than I thought. It's quite good.
Yeah, how's that going, by the way? Yeah, is it going well?
Yeah, it's done really well today, but
we'll talk about that after when we're off there. But I would no. The only thing what I would say is that I can imagine the people out there that would like to become a videographer or are interested in this kind of thing would really probably gain a lot from watching that. So you can hire him. He's big time, baby. You know what I haven't done in a while, by the way? You need to go and find us on Spotify and on iTunes and find us Movies in a Pod Show. Rate us 5 stars because we only accept 5 stars. And I haven't said that for a few episodes, but we do. We only accept 5 stars. So go and rate us. It really helps us go to the top of the feed when someone types in Star Wars, for example.
Please also check out on YouTube. Like, subscribe, hit the bell.
Touch that bell.
No, genuinely, if you could like and subscribe, that would be incredible. And also tell your friends because that's how people find us. Yeah,
touch the bell and then get notified. You can find me at Movies in a Podshell on Instagram. You can find us on YouTube, Movies in a Podshell. Movies in a Podshell everywhere. We're even on X, but we don't really go on there much because it's a cesspit. We'll be back next time, probably talking about Zone of Interest briefly, but we'll probably have a themed episode because... I don't know why. Anyway, we're probably time to go in it, John.
Yeah, bye.
See you.